subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Punched it with all his might, then sucked it again, punched it again, and so on. Not to mention escaping. Hachibi couldn't even escape the other's punches. The battle continued until the afternoon. Under Shintaro's continuous punches that seemed never to tire, Hachibi was on the brink of death. "B, I will try my best to save your life. I hope I can meet you again after my resurrection." After saying that, Hachibi left part of its chakra in Killer Bee's body and received Shintaro's final blow. Killer Bee and Hachibi were no longer connected as a vessel and weapon, but as friends who knew each other well. Therefore, what Hachibi thought about in its final moments was Killer Bee's life, and Killer Bee cried out, "Gyuki!" Shintaro's final punch exhausted Hachibi's remaining strength and chakra to resist. Then he approached Hachibi's bullhead, stepped on its horn, and aimed at the bullhead's large head. Curse technique reversal. Red. Boom. Hachibi's large head exploded, and then Hachibi's large body began to disappear. In fact, Shintaro had long seen that Hachibi was a chakra creature, and its current death was merely a manifestation of chakra exhaustion. One day, when the chakra recovered, it would be resurrected somewhere in the ninja world. But Shintaro didn't care. He could kill Hachibi once, and he could kill Hachibi a second time. He glanced at Killer Bee, floating unconscious on the sea surface, ignored him, and turned to fly to the shore. He was now going to gather the remnants of his comrades. As for Killer Bee, let him stay in the sea to fend for himself. In the worst case, he would handle it later. Shintaro flew in the air. Before he could fly very far, his body suddenly stopped. Then he immediately fell into the sea. 91. Reaction. Shintaro felt like he couldn't control his body, and then he fell into the sea. The water all around his body pushed the water out, causing him to continuously sink to a depth of thousands of meters. He soon found the reason. It turned out that he had just used the Limitless technique in the battle, and kept using blue and red to attack, overloading his brain and causing damage. And to heal the damage, he continued to use the reversal curse technique. This made his body adapt to activate reversal curse technique and red simultaneously, making it impossible to turn them off. Both infinity and reversal curse technique operate automatically, and their effects cancel each other out. To maintain this state, the brain has now taken control of all of Shintaro's mobility. In short, the CPU is exhausted, and nothing can be done except to maintain infinity and reversal curse technique. The brain is the core of the production of cursed techniques and the printing of curse techniques, and is crucial for a jujitsu sorcerer. Shintaro dared not disrupt this delicate balance recklessly. If something unexpected happened, it would be the end. Even reversal curse technique might not be able to heal him. The only way for him is to let his brain take control as quickly as possible to activate infinity and reversal curse technique simultaneously. Otherwise, Shintaro is likely to drown at the bottom of the sea. Deep underwater, the space that can be moved by infinity is very limited, and the remaining air is only enough for one person to breathe for 1 or 2 hours. However, reversal curse technique still functions. Even if the air runs out, the damage from oxygen deprivation will be healed by reversal curse technique. But in this case, it will be more difficult to fully control the automatic state of infinity. Moreover, reversal curse technique also has its limits. After hypoxia continues for several days, the degree of necrosis in Shintaro's body will exceed the limits of reversal curse technique. Shintaro calmed down, closed his eyes, focused his mind, and began to work hard to control infinity. In the sea, a Kumogakure ninja rowed a small boat and approached Killer Bee. He just hid far away and finally waited for their battle to end. He saw Shintaro fall to the bottom of the sea and thought the other party was too severely injured. He had already sentenced him to death, so he dared to approach Killer Bee. The Kumogakure ninja pulled the unconscious Killer Bee into the boat and rowed the boat towards the land of frost. Dozens of minutes later, nearing dusk, The reinforcements from Konoha arrived late. More than 900 ninjas led by Minato and 1,000 ninjas led by Hayashi arrived near the shore almost at the same time. Minato immediately noticed the traces of the Baijidama explosion, as well as the bodies of Team Inuzuka Gaku and his team within the blast radius. Kuramaru rushed to Gaku's body and whimpered. Everyone in Konoha was saddened. Gaku initially had a glimmer of hope, but he actively chose to sacrifice his life to convey information to the defense line faster. The actions of Daichi, Isamu, and Takuto in protecting their teammates before dying were also quite touching. Minato sent people to gather their remains, and then came to the shore to look for traces of Shintaro. Hayashi observed from the side and said, "There are no traces of the Kyumogakure ninja." Minato muttered, "Shintaro is very strong. But where is he?" Hisashi immediately said, "I am now leading the Hyuga clan to search in the sea, but I cannot guarantee that I can find him. The sea in the northern part of the Land of Frost is very deep, and our energy is limited." Minato said firmly, "Look, even if it's his body, we must find him. Shintaro is a hero of Konoha." Hayashi sensed Minato's emotions, so he could only agree. Then the members of the Hyuga clan opened their eyes and began searching for Shintaro from the shoreline. The news quickly spread to Konoha, and everyone's reactions were different. Konoha Chunin Uchiha Shintaro single-handedly forced back the Kyumogakure landing forces and defeated the Hachibi. His whereabouts are unknown. He is believed to have fallen to the bottom of the sea due to severe injuries. He is being searched for, but there is little hope of survival. In the Hokage's office, for senior Konoha officials discussing the war immediately received the information. In their eyes, the information was equivalent to the death of Uchiha Shintaro. Hiruzen, Danzo, Hamura, and Koharu. These four had once been members of the Guardians of the Second Hokage, Senju Tobarama. Hamura with glasses and a beard, while Koharu with a bun and earrings. Both wore the consultant robes of Konoha, and they already looked somewhat old. Hamura's eyes shone with sharpness behind his glasses. He crossed his arms and murmured, "Uchiha Shintaro is dead." It seems Konoha has lost another extraordinary talent. He seemed to remember the young white fang of Konoha, who died young. Koharu added, "Truly regrettable. He could have contributed more to Konoha." Koharu admired Shintaro's achievements. If Shintaro were still alive, there would be no need to worry about the war in the Northeast. Danzo sneered and said, "This may not be a bad thing. Uchiha Shintaro was a troublemaker and would not be used by Konoha even if he were still alive. I think it's okay if he's dead. At least the Uchiha clan has weakened." Hiruzen slammed the table and shouted, "Danzo, you've gone too far." Danzo said disdainfully, "I just said what you dare not say." Hiruzen scowled and ignored Danzo. "Uchiha Shintaro is a hero of Konoha. That's final. There is no doubt that at this moment, we must make a statement. Initially, I gave Uchiha Shintaro the position of Special Jonin because of his night attack on the Kyumogakure camp, but I received this news right after I sent him. I am now posthumously awarding Uchiha Shintaro the status of Jonin and giving him the title of Hero of Konoha. And the Inuzuka Gaku Squad will also be given the title of Hero Squad." Both Hamura and Koharu had no objections, who cared about giving respect to the deceased. Danzo said, "As long as you're happy, you're the one sending people to the border. What do you mean I killed Uchiha Shintaro?" Hiruzen said with a stern tone. Danzo waved his hand and said sarcastically, "I dare not. How could the third Hokage do such a thing?" Hiruzen was so angry that he kicked Danzo out of the Hokage's office. "You two should leave too. I'll be alone for a while." Hamura and Koharu also left. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair, lit his pipe, and began to smoke. For a long time, he muttered to himself, "Shintaro, I didn't expect sending you to the battlefield would result in this. Don't blame me." Sigh. He sighed and began to handle Shintaro's funeral affairs. Documents regarding the posthumous award of Konoha's hero, Uchiha Shintaro, were quickly posted to inform the entire village. Everyone felt sorry for this genius of Konoha, expressing both the glory of Shintaro's life and the greatness of his death. At this moment, a beautiful figure stumbled. It was Kurenai. Kurenai heard the news about Shintaro on the street. Unwilling to believe it, she ran towards the notice in front of the Hokage building, hoping to prove that it was just a rumor. She broke through the crowd and realized. The title of the announcement was about the posthumous honor of Konoha ninja, Uchiha Shintaro, and the members of Team Inuzuka Gaku who died in the line of duty. Kurenai felt dizzy, then fell to the ground. This appearance scared everyone, and then everyone realized that this girl was Shintaro's girlfriend. They both lived together every day when they were in the village, as Shintaro was very famous, and even Kurenai was familiar to the villagers. Despite her appearance, tears streamed down Kurenai's beautiful face, and she murmured, "Shintaro, you big liar." She still remembered Shintaro's words to her when he went to battle. Kurenai continued to wait, but what she awaited was the announcement that Shintaro had died in battle. Seeing this scene, the villagers watching sighed. During war, life and death are inevitable, but it would be cruel to ask Kurenai, a young girl, to bear this burden. In addition to Kurenai, former classmates like Asuma, Kakashi, Guy, Obito, Rin, and Anko were also shocked and saddened by Shintaro's death. Shintaro was very popular in his generation, and everyone mourned spontaneously. Not only his classmates, but also Shikaku and others, as well as Kosuke, Hayama, and Due, who had been part of Shintaro's team. The Uchiha Clan also mourned Shintaro, and his followers like Tetsuo cried the hardest. No one could imagine that Shintaro, whom they mourned, was still alive and well at the bottom of the Land of Frost. 92. Praise Minato. We've been searching all day, and the Hyuga clan members can't hold on any longer. Besides, Uchiha Shintaro should not be able to survive now. Let's give up. Hayashi came to the beach and said to Minato. Even though dozens of ninjas from the Hyuga clan had been searching all day, the ocean was so vast and deep that finding Shintaro was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Minato stubbornly said, "I told you, Shintaro is a hero of Konoha. Even his corpse must be found. Shintaro was sent to the Land of Frost on a mission by me. If I can't even find his body, how can I be worthy of him? How will I face Kurenai when I return to Konoha?" At that time, Shintaro was assigned to work under me. Fugaku and Shinku also came to me and specifically told me to take good care of him. It was all because of my poor decision-making that this happened. Minato reflected on the fact that Shintaro was sent to the Land of Frost and died while on a mission, and he deeply blamed himself. At Minato's insistence, the search continued. At night, everyone searched under the bright moonlight. At this moment, the surface of the sea in the distance suddenly broke, and a figure flew out from there, right under the full moon. The man had flowing white hair and was very handsome. He looked like a god under the moonlight. If it wasn't Uchiha Shintaro, who else could it be? Shintaro, Minato, who had come to the sea to search directly, was shocked to see him. Shintaro opened his arms and embraced the long-lost heir. He had mastered infinity automatically. The brain can permanently perform infinity and reverse curse technique operations without affecting other activities. In addition, this automatic lower limit can also identify objects that threaten him, so infinity can never truly be turned off. Non-threatening objects like air can freely pass through infinity, allowing Shintaro to breathe. This breakthrough could be said to have been achieved under the threat of death. So he felt like he was reborn. After a moment, Shintaro opened his eyes and saw Minato and the others below. He landed on the sea and greeted Minato. "Minato-sensei, how long has it been since we last met?" "I couldn't sense time in the dark depths of the sea." Minato was surprised. "You were at the bottom of the sea, and you still survive?" Shintaro smiled and said, "Don't forget my Kekkei Genkai." Minato then understood the reason why Shintaro survived. "Great. We all thought you were dead, and now it's the second night after you disappeared." Shintaro nodded and thought, "It's only been a day. It seems my talent is quite good." His extraordinary talent exploded at the critical moment of life and death, and he mastered automatic, infinity, in just one day. Now, his power had surpassed the peak of his previous life. Minato also felt that Shintaro had become slightly different. If he previously felt that Shintaro was a genius young man who had just shown his talent, now he only felt that Shintaro was an unexpectedly strong and mature man. Even Minato couldn't see Shintaro's current strength. Shintaro continued, "I won't die so easily. Bring me something to eat quickly. I'm hungry. I hope I can catch fish at the bottom of the sea." Minato smiled and said, "All right, I'll take you to eat. Barbecue," Shintaro added. "No problem." Minato's smile remained on his face, and his worried heart finally settled. Shintaro came to the temporary camp set up by Konoha's forces and enjoyed barbecue. Although it didn't have the taste of Kyu's barbecue, it was far inferior to Kosuke's skills, and there was no white sugar, but he was still satisfied, perhaps because he hadn't eaten anything seriously for 2 days. During the investigation mission at that time, Shintaro only consumed food pills, and even less water fell into him when he sank to the bottom of the sea. After enjoying the barbecue, he slept soundly alone in a tent. The next day, he followed Minato back to the land of hot water. When Shintaro saw Orochimaru licked his lips and jokingly said, "I knew Shintaro-kun wouldn't die so easily." Shintaro smiled and replied, "Then I must thank Orochimaru-sama for your trust." Orochimaru smiled thinly and said nothing. At this moment, Minato came in and said to Shintaro, "The bodies of Inuzuka and the others have been collected and will be sent to Konoha soon." Shintaro then hid his smile and left the camp, preparing to bid farewell to their bodies. He hadn't been with some members of Inuzuka Gaku's team for long, but they were also comrades in arms. Shintaro went to their bodies covered with white cloth and observed a long silence. Minato also stood silently by. Gaku was acquainted with Minato, and their team consisting of Daichi, Isamu, and Takuto was also an elite Chunin team under Minato's tutelage, so he felt sad. After a moment of silence, the bodies were sent to Konoha, where they would be buried in the martyr cemetery. Minato then brought Shintaro to his camp and said he had something to give him. As the commander of a 1,000-man force, he also had a larger camp. Minato came to the back of the desk and gestured for Shintaro to sit. Then he found some documents and letters from the file on the desk and handed them to him. Minato said to him, "These were all sent to you from Konoha. Some were sent a few days ago, and some were just sent today." Shintaro then opened the documents and looked at them, then fell silent. Minato felt strange, so Shintaro handed the documents to him to read. It was a document promoting Shintaro to Special Jonin. Shintaro's expression became calm, and he only felt ironic. Let alone Jonin, that was Daichi's hope. It fell to Shintaro, but it only showed that the top management of Konoha didn't trust him. He could imagine how the senior management felt after learning about his achievements. They were forced to give him the reward, but they worried that his promotion would be a threat if he was promoted too quickly, so they awarded him the title of Special Jonin. But aside from feeling ironic, Shintaro had no extra emotions. Although his strength surpassed his previous life, his current state of mind was also extraordinary. Minato awkwardly apologized and said, "This is just a document from before. Later, Hokage-sama will personally give you the Jonin position." Shintaro calmly opened the next document. As expected, it was a document posthumously promoting him to Jonin. The document also posthumously awarded him the title of Hero of Konoha, Inheritor of the Will of Fire, Hero of Konoha. Shintaro read the praise for himself in the document, not knowing what he was thinking. Minato nodded and said, "You are now a hero in the eyes of the entire village. I think everyone in the village will be very surprised to know that you are still alive." Shintaro calmly accepted the praise from the senior management, then put the document down, with some letters in his hand. Minato said, "These were also sent from Konoha. They just reached me." Shintaro then opened the first letter, and it was signed by Kurenai. He took out the letter paper and saw that the paper was wrinkled and the handwriting on it was blurred. Shintaro was deeply moved after reading the letter. "This silly girl cried like this and still wrote me a letter. This letter consisted of two parts. The first part was written by Kurenai when she thought Shintaro was dead. The entire text accused him of being a lying eye. In short, Shintaro was no longer human. Minato gently smiled and said, "You and Kurenai are very much like Kushina and me." Shintaro looked up with a smile and said, "I'm not so afraid of my wife." Minato scratched his face embarrassedly. Indeed, Kushina was more frightening than Kurenai. As for the remaining letters, they were written by Shinku, Fugaku, Kakashi, and Asuma. Shintaro wasn't interested in the feelings of these grown men, so he put them away after reading them hurriedly. 93. Reorganizing the team, Shintaro put away the letter and prepared to leave. Minato raised his hand to stop him again and said, "There's one more thing." Shintaro looked at him with questioning eyes. Minato then said, "The Inuzuka Gaku team has been wiped out, and this vacancy needs to be filled. You've already become a Jonin, so I thought, why not let you form a team? Consider it a reorganization of the Inuzuka Gaku team." Shintaro asked, "Who will decide the candidates?" "It's up to you. Here are some candidates who have applied to join your team. You can refer to it yourself. You can also choose others." Minato said, handing over a list of personnel. Shintaro took the list and left. He actually didn't really want to rebuild the team. He no longer cared about the situation on the battlefield, which was something the higher-ups in Konoha needed to consider. He now just wanted to focus on training, having surpassed the peak of his previous life, which only fueled his ambition. He wanted to become stronger. However, if there were some interesting candidates on the list, Shintaro might also be willing to form a squad. When he returned to the empty camp, it seemed he could still smell the sweat of the Inuzuka Gaku team. Shintaro shook his head slightly, then sat at a small desk in the corner of the camp and set the list aside. He took out a pen and paper from the drawer, and of course, the first thing he did was write a reply to Kurenai. After carefully writing a reply to Kurenai, Shintaro then finished writing replies to the others one by one to report that he was safe. Then he took the list given by Minato and looked at it. Most of them contained the names of some young ninjas. They often chose to apply to join his command because they admired his deeds. There were many names familiar to Shintaro. He took a pen and circled the 3 names he was most familiar with, then came to Minato's camp again with the list and replies. "You're here. Have you chosen someone?" Minato was sitting behind the desk, looking at him and asking. Shintaro handed over the reply letters first. "I've chosen, but first I'd like Minato-sensei to help me deliver these letters back to Konoha." Then Shintaro handed over the list. Minato nodded, setting aside the replies, took the list, and looked at it. Minato looked at the 3 names on the list and was slightly surprised. "What's wrong? Can I choose these 3 people?" Shintaro asked. Minato replied, "No, it's not that. Sarutobi Asuma, Uchiha Tetsuo, and Uchiha Hamasu. These 3 are from your class, and 2 of them are from the same clan. It's understandable that you would choose these 3. Minato's unspoken words were, "It's just that 3 Uchiha and 1 Sarutobi. This combination might be rare in the whole village." Shintaro then thanked him and left the camp. The transfer of personnel during wartime often happened promptly. One day later, the 3 members of Shintaro's team had arrived at the camp. Aniki, Tetsuo wanted to rush and hug Shintaro in a somewhat excessive manner, but Shintaro separated him without any hindrance. "It's been a long time. Aniki, you're too cold," Tetsuo said sadly. With crafty eyes, he poked the infinite gap between him and Shintaro and said in surprise, "What is this? Could it be that Aniki has mastered another special skill?" Shintaro said calmly, "Kekiai Genkai." Tetsuo immediately gave him a thumbs up and said, "I knew that Aniki is a handsome and talented man, and he will surely become the strongest Uchiha in history." Shintaro ignored Tetsuo's boast and waved his hand to look at the remaining 2 people. Asuma looked around the camp blankly, while Hamasu honestly called Shintaro Aniki. Shintaro nodded slightly as a greeting, then looked at Asuma and said, "What are you looking at?" Asuma came to his senses and replied, "I'm just observing. After all, this is my first time on the battlefield. Then let me show you around the camp." Shintaro approached the three of them and said, "Okay, Aniki." Tetsuo followed behind Shintaro. Used titles in the army. Shintaro corrected. Hamasu was the first to change his words. "Yes, Captain Shintaro." Tetsuo also called him Captain. After all, they both had been calling him Aniki since they were little, so they didn't have much baggage. Asuma hesitated for a while before he could say the word Captain. After all, he and Shintaro were once classmates, so it was a bit awkward to say it. Shintaro smiled faintly and said, "There's no one around now, so no need to be too serious." Asuma immediately said, speechlessly, "You just tricked me like this the first time we met, right?" "Huh, how can you say that? By the way, I've received the letter you wrote. Did you receive my reply?" Shintaro asked with a smile. Asuma nodded and said, "It was given to me while we were on the way." Shintaro nodded slightly and said, "When I wrote that letter, I didn't expect you to come to my team." "Did your father know about this?" Asuma replied, "I approached him earlier to apply to join the Northeast Defense Line Forces, but when I came to your team, he probably didn't know. At least I didn't tell him." Shintaro glanced at Tetsuo and Hamasu beside him, then said to Asuma, "I'm afraid if he knew, you wouldn't come so easily." Asuma asked confusedly why. Shintaro looked at him deeply and realized in his heart that the conflict between the Uchiha and Konoha's top management was not yet public. After all, Asuma was just a young Chunin in his early teens and did not know this, even though his father was the third Hokage. Shintaro shook his head and said, "Nothing. By the way, our current location is in the southwest of the camp. The one in the middle is Orochimaru's camp." Shintaro suddenly started introducing the camp, which made Asuma feel strange. He frowned, but didn't say much. Tetsuo and Hamasu listened carefully, but compared to the quiet Hamasu, Tetsuo was more out of the box. Tetsuo asked expectantly, "Then when can we go to the battlefield?" Shintaro glanced at Tetsuo and realized that this young man, like most young ninjas who had just entered the battlefield, was filled with the desire for achievement. He glanced at Hamasu again and saw that Hamasu's heart was actually the same as Tetsuo's, but he didn't show it. Shintaro glanced at Asuma for the last time, and Asuma seemed to have the idea of coming under his command to achieve great feats. So Shintaro said, "I don't know. Everything has to be controlled by Minato-sensei. But now the battle with the Kumogakure ninjas has reached a stalemate. I'm afraid it's unlikely that our frontline troops will directly enter the battlefield. Basically, it's reconnaissance missions that don't involve enemy contact." This answer disappointed the three of them. Aren't the frontline troops supposed to be the first to face the enemy? Asuma asked. Shintaro added, "That's when both sides confront each other. At present, Kumogakure had experienced 3 defeats. The camp was attacked at night, the general attack was repelled, and the landing force was defeated. Although the total strength of the troops was still superior, they had lost the courage to attack on a large scale. As the saying goes, a great advance can be made, then a retreat will be experienced, and 3 times will exhaust them." 94. The real war, those who most yearn for the battlefield have never experienced it. Asuma, Tetsuo, and Hamasu were such a group. Therefore, Shintaro did his best to keep them from going to the battlefield. However, he still underestimated the passion of boys their age. Asuma said seriously, "Even so, I will prove my strength on the battlefield." Tetsuo, not wanting to be outdone, said, "Don't underestimate the power of the Uchiha Clan. Missions like this investigation are too easy." Hamasu, rarely expressing his own opinion, said, "Me too." Shintaro raised his hand to his forehead, knowing that what he had just said was futile. He felt like a captain acting like the parent of a troublesome child, immediately regretting agreeing to Minato's team reorganization. That afternoon, he received orders requiring his team to go to the border of the Land of Frost to investigate the movements of the Kumogakure ninja. Shintaro easily packed his gear and watched as Asuma and the other 2 messed around in the camp for a long time, finally coming out fully equipped with bulging ninja pouches on their backs. In a reconnaissance mission, it's important to travel light. "Forget it, let's go." He compromised and let them be happy. Asuma then enthusiastically followed Shintaro, while Tetsuo and Hamasu appeared excited. As members of the Uchiha clan, Tetsuo and Hamasu were destined to join the police force. At that time, they could only stay in the village and do safe police duties. Therefore, they cherished the chance to go to the battlefield during the war. As the second son of the Hokage, Asuma had been well protected since childhood, so it was inevitable he would be overly excited when heading to the battlefield. Shintaro led the team to the border of the Land of Frost. The trees here began to thin out, and the flat highlands not far ahead were the Land of Frost. Shintaro sat in a tree, took out his notebook, and began recording information. This information was nothing more than the number of Kumogakure ninja crossing the border from here. Facing the Kumogakure ninja crossing the border, he could easily kill them, but he adhered to the mission requirements with a mentality of doing more rather than less, and remained silent to record intelligence. Shintaro's character allowed him to suppress his desire to kill the enemy and achieve merit, but the three rookie Chunin next to him were different. Shintaro, let's move forward. Rather than recording information, it's better to kill them directly. Asuma approached and said. Tetsuo and Hamasu also seemed to agree. There are 2 Jonin for Chunin and 6 Jinin on the Kumogakure side. We only have 1 Jonin and 3 Chunin. How can we manage that? Shintaro asked. Asuma was surprised. Aren't you here? Shintaro calmly replied. What if I weren't Uchiha Shintaro? With his strength, he could easily wipe out the small force in front of him alone. Asuma also knew this, so he urged him to take action anxiously. However, Shintaro's words made Asuma pause for a moment. Yes, when did I start relying on Shintaro's strength like this? Asuma asked himself silently. Seeing he had gained some insight, Shintaro continued to record the information. Tetsuo, confused, said, Aniki, what are you talking about? Aren't you Uchiha Shintaro? Shintaro helplessly said, If you only rely on my strength, you will never grow. Tetsuo's expression halted, and he also thought hard. Hamasu said from the side, Nisan, I think Aniki is right. Shintaro nodded happily and continued to record his information. However, sometimes if you don't seek trouble, trouble will come to you. A small group of 12 Kumogakure ninja noticed the movement of Shintaro and the others and immediately headed in this direction. It seemed the voices of Asuma and the other 2 asking Shintaro questions were a bit too loud. Shintaro sighed and said, Well then, let me give you the opportunity you've been waiting for. He, who originally just wanted to complete the mission and return to the camp after finishing work, started his force business. Facing an enemy of this level, he showed no interest. Shintaro jumped from the branch and charged at the small force of Kumogakure ninja with astonishing speed. He floated in the air, holding 2 Kumogakure Jonin with his hands. Don't interfere with the newcomer's performance on the battlefield. The 2 Kumogakure ninja quickly drew their swords to resist, but they couldn't slash his body. Shintaro raised his fingers, using blue to pull the 2 Kumogakure Jonin and 6 Jinin, leading them to fly to the flat highlands in the Land of Frost. The remaining 4 Kumogakure Chunin, staying in place, looked like they had just seen a ghost. One of the Kumogakure ninja suddenly remembered something and shouted, He's the white-haired eyed demon. Why does he look like a ghost? Another Kumogakure ninja was still frightened by Shintaro's figure earlier. Why did he let us go? Another Kumogakure ninja found that blind spot. Someone's here again. The last Kumogakure ninja spotted Asuma and the others. Kitan, hey Skish. Asuma launched an attack that gathered ash, and the Kumogakure ninja instinctively avoided the high-temperature ash, so the extremely powerful move only caused minor injuries to one enemy. It seemed the remaining Kumogakure Chunin were enough for Asuma and the others. Asuma drew his chakra blade and approached the enemy. At the same time, Tetsuo and Hamasu stood by Asuma, drawing kunai to attack the other Kumogakure ninja. Asuma alone pressured 2 Kumogakure Chunin, while the other 2 were handled by Tetsuo and Hamasu. Asuma's strength surpassed that of ordinary Chunin, but he also showed difficulty in dealing with 2 Kumogakure Chunin at the same time. Fortunately, his wind element happened to counter the lightning element, allowing him to suppress the 2 lightning element ninjas on the other side with his own strength. Next to them, Tetsuo and Hamasu were not weak and held their own against the adult Kumogakure ninja, who were also Chunin. The battle between the two sides continued. The two Kumogakure ninja cooperated to perform lightning element ninjutsu, trying various attacks to break through Asuma's wind element-covered fists. However, Asuma did not dodge, but charged forward. Chikurati, Meikamanji, the chakra blade in his hand suddenly extended a sharp wind blade, breaking through the lightning chakra defense and slashing the chests of the two Kumogakure ninja, finally killing them. However, the residual power of the lightning wave also struck him, causing him to kneel on the ground in paralysis. The enemy in front of Tetsuo showed a moment of panic-induced weakness, which Tetsuo's single Tomo Sharingan detected sharply, and a kunai was launched, accurately striking the enemy's throat. The enemy Hamasu faced was even tougher. He raised his sword, about to slash Hamasu's head. Seeing this, Tetsuo rushed forward anxiously, trying to prevent the tragedy. Hamasu, seeing his younger brother in danger, Tetsuo instantly unlocked his double Tomo Sharingan. However, at this moment, the Kumogakure ninja suddenly turned around and slashed at Tetsuo behind him. The Kumogakure ninja appeared fierce, thinking he had succeeded. Tetsuo's newly opened double Tomo Sharingan allowed him to react to the limit, but due to his physical limitations, he was a half-step too slow. Uchiha Tetsuo was stabbed in the chest, and blood spattered. Ni-san. Seeing this, Hamasu also evolved from single Tomo to double Tomo, exploding with astonishing speed, and a kunai was thrust into the Kumogakure ninja's waist. The Kumogakure ninja leaned forward in pain, and Tetsuo grabbed the ninja's sword despite his injury, plunging it into the ninja's neck, splattering blood on his face. At this moment, Shintaro, who had been confronting the enemy and staying on the highlands to watch the show, approached the group. So now, you should have a little understanding of what war is, right? 95. The role of friends Asuma forced his stiff and numb body to rise from the ground, kneeling with his head bowed and silent. Hamasu hurried to Tetsuo to check his wound frantically, but it only made Tetsuo grit his teeth in pain. Aniki, we were careless. Without you, we couldn't even face these people. Tetsuo turned to Shintaro and blamed himself. He didn't care about his wound, but he was still afraid of the fact that Hamasu was in danger now. Hamasu's eyes reddened. Sorry, Ni-san. If you hadn't saved me, you wouldn't have gotten hurt. This small injury is nothing. Hiss, said Tetsuo, inhaling cold air. Although his injury wasn't fatal, there was still a risk of it worsening if not treated promptly. Shintaro then said in a deep voice, All right, let's return to the camp for treatment. Tetsuo's injury is nothing. Reverse curse technique could only be used to heal himself. Otherwise, he would have healed them both. Hamasu wiped his tears and nodded, supporting Tetsuo, while Tetsuo cursed, Idiot, it's not like my leg is broken. Do I need you to help me? Hamasu immediately pulled his hand away as if he had made a mistake. Seeing this, Tetsuo realized that his tone was too harsh, and he was also very aware of his younger brother's thoughts. So he changed his tone and said patiently, I'm not blaming you for my injury. I was afraid the Kumogakure ninja's initial move was aimed at me. Hamasu nodded silently and did not reply. Tetsuo then hugged Hamasu's neck playfully, leaning on him, and said, Okay, it's my fault now. I know you care about me. Hamasu's face relaxed a little, and he raised his head and said seriously, Ni-san, I won't let you get hurt for me again. Tetsuo was stunned for a moment, then smiled. Oh, you grown up. Shintaro turned back to Asuma and said, Let's go, Asuma. Why are you still kneeling on the ground? Asuma stood up, looking a bit confused. It was the first time he had fought a life-and-death battle with a ninja of equal rank from one of the 5 great ninja villages. He realized his lack of strength in the previous fight and muttered, I'm still too weak. Shintaro consoled. After all, you also defeated 2 Chunin. Asuma wanted to say more. Shintaro raised his hand to stop him. I've told you long ago, don't compare yourself to me. Asuma sighed and said, I'm not competing with you. It's just. Shintaro's blue eyes stared at him. Yes, even though you can't compare to me, there are many friends stronger than you. He spoke a harsh truth. Asuma's eyes trembled, feeling hurt by the truth he didn't want to acknowledge. But so what? Everyone must become stronger, including me. If I were strong enough back then, I could have saved the Inuzuka Gaku forces and prevented them from dying on the shores of the Land of Frost. Even though I've become stronger, I still want to become stronger. And now I realize that not only do I need to become stronger, but my friends also need to become stronger. To change the Uchiha Clan and Konoha, I can't rely solely on my own strength. Asuma, Tetsuo, Hamasu, you are all friends that I acknowledge. Shintaro's words made Asuma and the other two look at him one by one. Shintaro knew that if he wanted to change the Uchiha Clan and Konoha, he couldn't do it alone. Maybe with his current strength, which surpassed his previous life, he could kill all the Konoha higher-ups. But then what? After that, Konoha would hate him and the Uchiha Clan. His idea was to foster a group of strong and intelligent friends to change the fate of the Uchiha Clan and Konoha together. And if the three people in front of him could be marked off Shintaro's list, it meant they were part of that group. Become stronger, at least. Don't fall too far behind me, he said sincerely. Hearing this, Asuma's gaze changed from the previous confusion and bewilderment to determination. Tetsuo changed his usual cunning and crafty attitude and rarely remained silent. Meanwhile, Hamasu was moved and shouted, "Aniki, I definitely won't let you down." Shintaro smiled and said, "Actually, the atmosphere doesn't have to be too serious. I was just speaking a few words from the heart." Speaking of becoming stronger, everyone knows the importance of it, but sometimes it is limited by various reasons. But now you are on my team, I will take the responsibility as captain. If you need help, you can come to me. His words fully showed the responsibility and attitude of a captain. Asuma and the others also felt that Shintaro was no longer just a young genius. He had become an experienced ninja on the battlefield. However, it seemed Shintaro had been this mature since he was a child. Asuma, Tetsuo, and Hamasu nodded seriously. The four then returned to the Konoha camp. Hamasu sent Tetsuo to the medical ninja for treatment, while Shintaro and Asuma waited outside. Shintaro took the initiative and said, "Rasengan, how's your training?" Hearing that, Asuma raised his hand and produced a Rasengan, the size of a ball, and said, "It's okay." Shintaro glanced at the Rasengan in Asuma's hand with his 6 eyes and commented, "Its stability still needs improvement, but it's acceptable. Have you ever thought about injecting wind element chakra into the Rasengan?" Wind element? Asuma was initially surprised, then suddenly realized, yes, Rasengan would definitely be very suitable for wind element. If the extreme chakra form change is combined with the chakra property change, then its power can definitely be enhanced. As expected of you, Shintaro, a very genius idea. Shintaro smiled slightly and said, "It is indeed a genius idea, but it's not mine. This idea was proposed by Minato-sensei. He asked me to study the wind element chakra change of Rasengan together. You happen to be the most talented wind element ninja I know. I think you can help." Asuma accepted the recognition and said happily, "Don't worry, I will study it with full concentration." Shintaro nodded slightly. At this moment, Tetsuo's injury had been treated, bandaged, and he was released. He then said, "Today's mission is over. You can stay in the camp and recover." After that, he left alone. Upon reaching a secluded area, Shintaro activated his 3-Tomo Sharingan. He noticed that his Sharingan appeared slightly blue due to the fusion with the 6 eyes, and the basic functions of the Sharingan were also enhanced, which was very beneficial for ninjutsu development. He produced a Rasengan in his hand. In the previous battle, he tried to combine Rasengan and blue, but unfortunately failed. He wanted to try it again alone. The Rasengan spun rapidly in his hand. He lifted the Rasengan, then used that hand to release blue simultaneously. Blue intertwined with the blue color of the Rasengan. Shintaro adjusted the direction of the blue, pull from outside to inside, with the center right in the middle of the Rasengan, and the pull range exactly at the radius of the Rasengan. In this way, the clear chakra of the Rasengan began to gather inside, and its color also changed from light to dark, until the Rasengan, which was originally the size of a basketball, turned into a dark blue ball the size of an egg. Shintaro lifted his hand and struck the dark blue Rasengan at the tree trunk. Boom! The tree trunk shattered into pieces, and the residual power of the dark blue Rasengan continued, destroying 10 trees behind it as well. Clearly, the chakra consumed did not change, but its power increased significantly due to compression. Shintaro saw potential in this research direction. Sure enough, the development of wind element Rasengan is left to Asuma, so I can concentrate on researching the combination of Limitless technique and Rasengan. Shintaro once again found a roll of friends. 96. Winter assault the next day. Asuma and the others became more disciplined. Besides carrying out missions with Shintaro daily, they also trained diligently. Asuma mainly focused on developing the wind element Rasengan. Tetsuo specialized in fire and earth elements, practicing ninjutsu from these two attributes, and Hamasa concentrated on fire element training. Shintaro primarily tried to combine the Limitless technique with Rasengan and also attempted to use the Limitless technique for space-time movement. The first idea was Shintaro's own inspiration, and the latter was inspired by Hirashin no Jutsu. These peaceful days lasted for several months. Initially, Asuma and the others wouldn't have been able to endure such a peaceful life. However, after encountering enemies during that reconnaissance mission, the three of them understood the meaning of war and trained peacefully while completing their missions. After the beginning of winter, the cold of the forest in the land of forest became even more intense. It was now the 49th year of Konoha. During these days, the Kumogakure ninja seemed very quiet. It seemed they were waiting for spring to launch their attack. It was another routine reconnaissance mission. Shintaro's team arrived at the northern border of the land of forest, but this time the reconnaissance location was a bit far in the northwestern coastal area. Tetsuo patrolled with boredom and yawned. Hamasu, on the other hand, had a vigilant expression on his face. He was always meticulous in his duties. Asuma sighed heavily and covered his mouth with his hand to keep warm. It's so cold. Shintaro played with a leaf in his palm, and the leaf swayed in the air as a blue light glowed in his palm. By activating the automatic infinity, the cold air around his body was isolated, so there was no feeling of cold in the middle of this winter. Just wait. It won't be cold until spring arrives, Shintaro said casually. Asuma wore a brown leather coat with warm white fur at the collar. Even so, he still complained about the cold from time to time. He looked at Shintaro wearing a thin white shirt bought by Kurenai in the fall and a black jacket with the Uchiha Clan emblem. But he didn't feel cold at all. Asuma couldn't help but complain. You wear the same clothes all year round, yet you dare say you're cold in front of all of us. Shintaro waved his hand. Since mastering the automatic infinity boundary, he had lived a clean life with warm winters and cool summers. Suddenly, Shintaro turned and looked toward the border and said firmly to the three, "Someone is coming. You need to return immediately." Asuma drew his chakra blade and said, "We are no longer the fools we used to be. We can help you." Tetsuo and Hamasu agreed. Shintaro said, 1,000 people are coming. Are you sure you can help me?" This left the three of them silent. How is that possible? Since the beginning of winter, Kumogakure's attacks have stopped. They only attack in small forces of a dozen or so at a time. How can? Asuma couldn't believe Kumogakure would launch an attack of 1,000 people in the depths of winter. Shintaro looked at Asuma with his blue eyes and said, "This is what I see with these eyes." Seeing this, Asuma believed his words, and Tetsuo and Hamasa showed unconditional trust. The three of them were no longer newcomers on the battlefield. Asuma and the others also understood that staying would only cause trouble for Shintaro, so they didn't pretend and rushed to the rear. Shintaro then walked out of the forest and faced the 1,000-strong Kumogakure ninja forces. This 1,000-man force moved very quickly, and they were likely all elites. The number 1,000 was also very specific. This number wouldn't be too large to put Konoha on full alert. Additionally, they chose a remote northwestern corner of the defense line. If Shintaro wasn't patrolling here, this 1,000-man force could easily kill the reconnaissance team and sneak past the defense line to directly attack the Konoha camp. It seemed this was a long-planned winter assault by Kumogakure. Shintaro stood alone at the edge of the forest in a land of forest. AI was the one rushing at the forefront of the Kumogakure ninja forces. As soon as AI saw Shintaro, he immediately activated his Thunder Chakra mode and didn't dare relax at all. He stopped, and the Kumogakure forces behind him also halted. "Long time no see, AI. I thought you'd become obedient." Shintaro walked slowly towards the other side and said. AI faced him with a face full of hatred and didn't respond. "I heard that the Hachibi Jinchuriki in your village hasn't died yet. It was indeed my negligence at that time that allowed him to escape by chance." Shintaro's words were full of mockery. AI gritted his teeth and said, "Yes, I have sent me back to the land of thunder to train. One day, you will pay the price." He valued Killer Bee greatly as his brother. When he learned that Killer Bee narrowly escaped the battlefield, he had lingering fears and sent him to the Thunder Canyon for secluded training, hoping his power would increase. "Ha ha ha ha!" Shintaro suddenly laughed like a villain, then said, "That's right. I will wait for him to come to me, saving me the trouble of going to the land of thunder to take his life." Often only villains give others a chance to grow, but he did this. Shintaro's idea was to wait until Killer Bee thought he could take revenge on him after working hard, and then cruelly crush his mind, delivering the most fatal psychological blow. This idea was very counterintuitive. The premise of this idea was that Shintaro had complete confidence in his own strength. His words were accompanied by 2 fingers pointing at AI. The hair on AI's head stood up instantly. Red light condensed at the fingertips and then exploded. AI reacted quickly, and a lightning arc appeared all over his body as he quickly left the spot. But the Kumogakure ninja behind him were pitiful. A gap in the Kumogakure ninja forces was blown up in an instant. Several people died directly, and dozens were affected. For Shintaro, this was just an ordinary attack at this level. "Spread out. Everyone spread out." AI yelled at the Kumogakure ninja as he fled in panic. Shintaro seemed to keep raising his hand to bombard the Kumogakure ninja forces. Scorching heat blasted out, and an enormous repulsive force contracted and exploded, blasting flesh and blood one by one in the Kumogakure ninja forces. Each gap contained several bleeding and mutilated limbs and broken arms of Kumogakure ninja, their deaths pitiful. The Kumogakure ninja fled in all directions, utterly panicked. AI was stunned as he watched this. He never imagined that the long-planned winter assault would coincidentally encounter Shintaro, the Death Star of Kumogakure ninja. Retreat. Although AI was unwilling, seeing so many casualties and Shintaro's unpredictable methods, he could only make the decision to retreat. To reduce losses, he could only rush toward Shintaro and try to stop him. Shintaro turned and smiled faintly. "I've been waiting for you." He suddenly flipped his fingers and shot towards AI. AI screamed, and his body flew immediately. 97. The front line defeated AI was thrown by Red, losing balance and flying back dozens of meters. The thunder element chakra surrounding him prevented him from bleeding like other Kumogakure ninjas, but he still suffered serious injuries. The white vest on AI's chest was shattered, and an ugly scar suddenly appeared on his chest. Blood dripped to the ground, forming a pool of blood in front of him. "Ha, ha, ha." AI panted, finally realizing the kind of enemy Killer Bee had faced at that time. He looked around and saw that the Kumogakure ninjas had been completely defeated. But this was only to be Shintaro's target. For the large force to retreat successfully, he had to hold Shintaro back. AI activated Thunder Chakra, threw out his body to the extreme, then turned into a shadow and began moving very quickly around his opponent. This was still the old method, but it worked quite well. Shintaro opened his 3-tomo Sharingan, partially colored blue by the 6 eyes. He could see AI's figure clearly, but both blue and red found it difficult to hit him. While moving, AI picked up a fallen shuriken from the ground, injected it with Thunder Chakra, and threw it at Shintaro. At the same time, he moved behind him. AI's thunder shuriken struck the back of Shintaro's neck, and simultaneously, the thunder shuriken in front of him flew towards his face. AI knew the other party had the ability to block his attacks. However, he didn't know the range and limitations of this ability, so he planned to test it one by one with his attacks. Unfortunately, Infinity now not only had no shortcomings, but couldn't even be turned off. AI's attack failed, and the strange feeling of pause made his heart sink. He immediately retreated and prepared to escape. He was now certain there was nothing he could do against Shintaro. But Shintaro wouldn't allow AI to come and go as he pleased. Blue. A blue sphere absorbed AI's foot from his soles. It's over. He was shocked, seeing Shintaro turn and attack with Rasengan in his hand. Initially, AI thought Rasengan would be blocked by him as usual, but he noticed the Rasengan looked darker than he had seen before. Rasengan. Bang, the old Rasengan hit AI's chest, and he flew back again. The astonishing chakra from Rasengan broke through AI's Thunder Chakra defense. This time, a bloody hole was created in his chest by Rasengan, and white ribs could even be seen through the broken flesh. Shintaro clicked his tongue. It seems the power still needs to be strengthened. It's not much stronger in close combat now. The Rasengan just now was the size of a ball, and its compression consumed dozens of times the chakra of an ordinary Rasengan. But its power was unsatisfactory, at least for Shintaro. However, this unsatisfactory attack nearly killed AI. In the critical moment of his life, he remembered his father's gentle teachings. Though the third Raikage appeared harsh, he was actually very gentle and loving in his teachings to his son. AI also thought of Killer Bee. They had a tacit understanding since they met, and the team they formed was even more famous in the ninja world. Thinking of these two, AI burst out with an extraordinary fighting spirit in desperate situations, completely ignoring the horrific wound on his chest, delaying the last evacuation time for the large force. Seeing AI not giving him a chance, Shintaro had no desire to continue the fight. He condensed chakra in his hand, continuously injecting it. With the blessing of the six eyes, his chakra utilization rate was extremely high, so he created an incredibly large Rasengan, perhaps the size of a room. Then Shintaro urged Blue to compress the huge Rasengan into the size of a basketball. Under such compression, the core of this Rasengan even turned slightly red. Shintaro lifted Rasengan and aimed it at the ground towards AI, smashing it. Boom, the terrifying power easily tore apart most of the ground, triggering a massive storm of gravel. The sky filled with debris and stones hurled forward, each carrying the power of bullets. Shintaro turned and left without glancing at AI. If AI could survive, that was his problem. Since Shintaro awakened the 3-tomo and mastered reverse curse technique, and read again, he no longer took the people of Kumogakure seriously, including AI and Killer Bee. After all, Shintaro appeared humble on the surface, but the arrogance in his heart could no longer be hidden. However, if AI could survive, Shintaro would discard some of his disdain. After a long time, a dark hand suddenly emerged from there, covered with small scars. AI crawled out of the ruins with difficulty. He looked at the rocky highland that had become ruins and fell into deep despair. Indeed, Shintaro, who could kill Hachibi, could no longer be measured from a human perspective. AI supported his body and walked back. He felt slightly lucky that Shintaro spared his life, but he was soon filled with low spirits. While AI was walking to retreat, a young Kumogakure ninja wearing a high blue hat rushed in front of AI. AI-sama, why are you here? The Kumogakure ninja in front of him was named Dodai. He was a close subordinate of AI's father, the third Raikage. He had the lava Kekiai Genkai and had already become a jonin at a young age, entrusted to AI by the third Raikage. I lost. Go and tell father that I want to return to the village to train with B. AI said lowly. Along the way, Dodai saw the defeated Kumogakure ninjas, the ruins in front of him, and AI's severely injured body, naturally understanding that the Kumogakure ninjas' winter offensive had been defeated. However, Dodai said nothing to AI about this, instead telling him the shocking news. The Wagakure has invaded our homeland. He bowed his head, with an unbearable look in his eyes. Dodai saw that AI was already very low, so he couldn't bear to tell him the cruel truth, but for the sake of Kumogakure, he had to inform him. AI was in a daze, and Dodai continued. The village is defenseless. To protect the village, Reikage Sama used Tenso no Jutsu to teleport to the Iwagakure forces to fight alone. This is already the second day. Reikage Sama sent me to ask for support and request the large force station in Frost Country to return for defense immediately. He also said, if unfortunately he dies in battle, you will inherit the position of the fourth Reikage. AI was stunned for a long time. The front line was defeated and his village was invaded. Successive blows made him faint directly after reacting. AI Sama. Dodai anxiously held AI's blood-soaked body. Iton, Gamadama. After forming a seal, Dodai released a rubber ball from his mouth, wrapping AI inside, leaving a gap for breathing, and then rushed back as fast as he could with AI on his back. 98. He ran away and chased him on the way back to the camp. Shintaro met Asuma and the reinforcements behind them. Aniki. Tetsuo stepped forward, looking around and finding that Shintaro was fine, and said, just as expected from Aniki. Hamasu also felt relieved. Asuma asked, were those thousands of troops defeated by you? Shintaro nodded and said, yes. Asuma was accustomed to Shintaro's extraordinary strength, so he wasn't too surprised. The reinforcements behind him were led by Minato himself. He had his own assessment of the battlefield situation and asked, the thousands of troops led by AI were here. I'm afraid all the signs of the previous slowdown in attacks were to cover for this. Fortunately, you blocked them. Their troops were defeated. What about AI? Shintaro's answer was beyond Minato's expectations. I was too lazy to chase him, so he moved and left. He might already be dead. Minato was amused by Shintaro's relaxed attitude and said, then let's check. This time we sent troops. I plan to counterattack Kumogakure. Shintaro followed Minato back to the battlefield. When all the Konoha ninja saw the scene in front of them, they were all stunned. Most of the rocky highlands in the land of frost suddenly disappeared, which was the size of a soccer field. Indeed, all the rocks had turned into rubble and piled up in front to form a heap of hills. Shintaro observed it with 6 eyes and said in surprise, this can keep him alive. That Thunder Chakra mode is very tough. Minato analyzed. Perhaps Thunder Chakra could withstand the impact of these rocks. Then he asked curiously, what technique did you use? It was as powerful as Baijidama. Shintaro then stretched out his hand to show Rasengan and said, it was a combination of Rasengan and my Kekiai Genkai. Minato shook his head helplessly and said, you really tried to improvise Rasengan. Shintaro smiled and said, I can't help it. Who said this technique is very useful? Minato laughed upon hearing his ninjutsu being praised. After that, he changed his expression and commanded the troops behind him. Keep moving forward and launch a counterattack while the Kumogakure troops are defeated. This time, we must hit Kumogakure hard so they don't dare to attack. Oh, the Konoha ninja responded with fighting spirit. After all, the troops were now led by the powerful yellow Flash Namikaze Minato in the ninja world, and there was also a new strongman emerging on this battlefield, the white-haired demon eyes Uchiha Shintaro. The Konoha ninja had 2 strongmen as guarantees, so they all followed Minato's orders enthusiastically. The Konoha ninja rushed to the highlands of the Land of Frost and hurried toward the Kumogakure camp. Along the way, everyone found that they encountered no obstacles, and all the Kumogakure ninja defenses seemed to have been abandoned. Minato concluded the current situation from these clues. Did Kumogakure choose to shrink the defensive line because of the recent defeat? It shouldn't be. Kumogakure is still transporting troops to the Land of Frost. I'm afraid there are already more than 10,000 troops. Even if 1,000 troops were lost, it wouldn't shrink the entire line. Could it be something went wrong with them locally? Minato's intelligence was indeed superior. and he was able to deduce the truth from the clues. So he immediately ordered, "Abandon the defense and move forward at full speed, targeting the Kumogakure stronghold." Shintaro also saw what Minato was thinking. It seemed Minato wanted to use this opportunity to drive the Kumogakure ninjas out of the Land of Frost and bring them back to the Land of Thunder. It would be difficult to do this under normal circumstances, but now there were Shintaro and Minato in this team of 1,000 people, and they were facing a great opportunity. So Shintaro was confident this would be his last fight on the northeastern defensive line. Soon, the group arrived in front of the camp. On the walls of the Kumogakure camp, Dodai received information from the sensory ninja and had just climbed the wall, and he saw the Konoha troops. There are only 1,000 people, but those two are here. Damn, why did they choose this time? Dodai had announced the order to withdraw the troops, and now AI was in a coma. As the trusted aide of the Third Reikage, he held the command. But it took time for the 10,000 troops to retreat. Dodai had separated the first group of 3,000 vanguard troops and moved together with AI. Plans were now being made to transfer the second wave of 5,000 Kumogakure ninja, most of them. Dodai immediately ordered, "Don't stop the second wave of troops. Keep moving. The remaining 2,000 people, follow me to the wall to fight the Konoha ninja." The second wave of 5,000 ninja was the main force returning to the Land of Thunder to repel Iwagakure. They could not be dragged into the Land of Frost. Otherwise, the village of Kumogakure would be in danger. That's why Dodai decided to let the second wave of troops evacuate first, while he and the third wave troops stayed behind to block the pursuing Konoha troops. Iton, Gamiya. The Earth platform emitted a large amount of rubber to the walls to strengthen the defense. A large amount of rubber adhered to the walls to form a thick protective layer, which was very elastic and could rebound most physical damage, and ordinary ninja tools could not penetrate it. Dodai had done all he could, and he could only leave it to fate. The Konoha troops soon arrived outside the camp. The Konoha ninja began using their methods to attack. Various ninja tools, explosive tags, shurikens were thrown at them, but most of them bounced off, and the explosive tags had no effect when detonated on it. Dodai breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing this, and thought to himself, "We have the advantage of strength and terrain, so we should be able to defend it." Asuma drew the chakra blades and stepped forward to inflict damage on the rubber protective layer, but was forced back by Kumogakure ninjutsu guarding the wall. For a moment, the Konoha ninjas' attacks seemed very sluggish. But don't forget, Konoha still had 2 strongmen. Shintaro ignored the various attacks from ninja tools and ninjutsu from the Kumogakure ninjas above. The attacks stopped around him and were dispelled by him. He walked directly to the wall, extended 2 fingers, and made a gun gesture. Reversal curse technique, Rev. Boom, the melted rubber protective layer exploded instantly, and then the wall behind it shattered into pieces. A hole appeared in the wall large enough for the troops to pass through. Minato held a kunai and threw it at the wall, then used Hirashin no Jutsu to come to the midst of the Kumogakure ninja and kill everyone. Led by Shintaro and Minato, Konoha's attack was fierce. Even if the Kumogakure ninja had a numerical advantage, it wouldn't help. Dodai quickly realized that defeat was inevitable. Seeing that the second wave of troops had successfully evacuated, he immediately ordered the entire army to retreat. However, as soon as the defeated troops retreated, it would become an unstoppable rout. The Kumogakure ninja dispersed, which in turn would lead to many casualties. Even Dodai himself was not spared. His lava release was a good defense type. However, this kind of defense had almost no effect in front of Shintaro, who had an extremely strong output. The impact of the attack far exceeded the defense strength of the rubber rebound. In this way, Dodai hid and was destroyed by Red, and the 2,000 troops were almost wiped out. Only a few dozen people managed to escape back across the border to the Land of Thunder. 99. Back to the village, Asuma led the charge and wanted to cross the border to continue the pursuit, but Minato stopped him. Asuma asked, confused, "The enemy has been defeated. Even if we chase them, we won't be in danger. Why not pursue them?" Minato spoke slowly. "If we enter the Land of Lightning's territory, it will be considered an invasion. This must be approved by the Hokage-sama, and Hokage-sama probably wouldn't approve. That old man. Asuma was very dissatisfied with this. He could have annihilated all the Kumogakure ninjas in front of him now, but he let them escape. Shintaro was not surprised at all by this, thinking that the war had finally ended, and he had no intention of staying on this battlefield any longer. Minato announced the withdrawal, and everyone returned to the Konoha camp located in the Land of Frost. At the training camp, Orochimaru smiled and nodded after learning that Kumogakure was defeated and had fled back to the Land of Lightning. Minato asked confused, "You're not surprised?" Orochimaru then took out a photo and information and said, "This was sent to me by a spy I planted in a Wagakure village. I knew from the beginning that a Wagakure village would attack Kumogakure village while we held back their main force. It's just that this matter was confidential, and only I knew about it." Minato nodded in understanding, confirming his previous conclusion in his heart. It seemed that Kumogakure village had indeed been attacked. Orochimaru's eyes lit up with joy. After all, as the Supreme Commander, it would be beneficial for him to win the war. "I will ask Sarutobi-sensei to withdraw the troops now. You should also go down and prepare for evacuation." After he finished speaking, he went to the back table to write a letter, and Minato left the command camp to inform his troops of the withdrawal. The Konoha ninjas and the troops cheered. Seeing this, Minato followed up and announced that a celebration party would be held tonight, and all supplies in reserve would be used for the celebration. "Long live Minato-sama." "Yay! Thank you, Minato-sama." The audience reacted enthusiastically. Shintaro silently observed Minato in the crowd. He could see that Minato was more popular among the Konoha ninjas than the ruthless Orochimaru. Asuma patted his shoulder. After Shintaro lifted his barrier and allowed Asuma to pat him, he asked, "What's up?" Asuma said, "After we return to Konoha, I will treat the three of you to barbecue." He was already familiar with Shintaro and had gotten to know Tetsuo and Hamasu on the battlefield, so he naturally thought of treating them to a meal upon returning to the village. Shintaro nodded in agreement. "Let's have barbecue." "No problem." Asuma and Shintaro were both regulars at Barbecue Q. Tetsuo and Hamasu looked at each other and smiled. The war on the northeastern defensive line finally ended, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. At night, the celebration banquet proceeded smoothly under Minato's suggestion. Except for the necessary rotating guards, everyone gathered in the camp, and bonfires were lit in the camp. Everyone in the camp gathered around this bonfire, and the crowd helped everyone withstand the winter cold. All the wine and food were served. Some drunken ninjas started dancing around the bonfire, and the scene was very cheerful. The initiator of this banquet, Minato, was sitting leisurely leaning against a tree, quietly reading, occasionally looking up and smiling brightly at the cheerful crowd. He was an extraordinary ninja who strictly adhered to the three ninja prohibitions: forbidding alcohol, luxury, and sex. The alcohol prohibition meant you should not drink alcohol before the age of 18, and you should not drink excessively after the age of 18, let alone binge drinking. The luxury prohibition referred to ninjas needing to maintain a simple daily life, forbidding the excessive pursuit of money and material things. Sex meant it was forbidden to enter or leave brothels unless required by a mission. Minato strictly adhered to these rules, but he did not impose them on those around him. For example, his teacher Jiraiya at least violated the first and last three prohibitions, and Minato only occasionally persuaded him. As for now being a time of festive celebration, the alcohol prohibition could be slightly relaxed. "Minato-sensei, why don't you go have a drink?" Shintaro, having had enough to eat and drink, walked towards Minato and saw the book the other party was reading titled Dokan Ninden. "Drinking will affect combat. After all, we are still on the battlefield, so we must stay vigilant." Minato shook his head calmly. "Besides, I don't really like drinking. The main reason is Kushina's nose is too good. If I drink a little, she will smell it and then give me a lesson." He smiled bitterly, but when Kushina was mentioned, an expression of longing quickly filled his face. "I wonder how Kushina will react when I return to the village." Shintaro first agreed with Minato's attitude towards alcohol and said, "What I hate most is drinking. After drinking, my mind isn't clear." "You're not of age. Where did you drink?" Minato asked, confused. Shintaro lightly shook his head and did not answer the question, but said, "After returning to the village, Minato-sensei should be one step closer to that position." Minato's face suddenly became serious. He looked around, ensuring no one was around, and asked, "Why did you suddenly say this?" Shintaro smiled and said, "I hope that after Minato-sensei takes over, you can change the policy towards the Uchiha clan." Minato paused and said, "Let's talk about this later." In fact, Shintaro had just heard Tetsuo and Hamasu complaining, saying they might go to the police force to help after returning to the village. Then he found Minato and talked to him about some issues regarding the Uchiha clan. Seeing that Minato did not want to talk about this at the moment, Shintaro casually changed the topic. "By the way, what book is Minato-sensei reading?" Minato thoughtfully took the book, showed him the title, and said, "Dokanjinin Den is my favorite novel. I really like the protagonist character. By the way, this book was written by Jiraiya-sensei." "I see." Shintaro chatted with him about the book for a while and then left. After Shintaro left, Minato put down the book, looked after him, and murmured, "Change the policy towards the Uchiha clan." He was lost in thought for a moment. After the celebration banquet, the Konoha troops did not evacuate immediately. After getting permission from the third Hokage, the northeastern defensive line of Konoha began to be evacuated gradually, and some troops remained for garrison duty. Although Shintaro was not assigned to the garrison, he was also one of the last to withdraw. When it was Shintaro's team's turn to withdraw, spring had begun. Outside the Konoha gate, many villagers spontaneously came to welcome the Konoha heroes returning to the village, including many relatives and friends of the ninjas in the army. Shintaro glimpsed Kurenai looking forward to him and walked forward, raising his hand to greet her. Kurenai was so surprised that she didn't care to be reserved and rushed forward to hug Shintaro. "I said I would come back," Shintaro said softly in Kurenai's ear. 100. Chidori Kurenai hugged Shintaro tightly, and it took more than 10 minutes before she let him go. Kurenai opened her eyes and, after looking around, noticed something. "Why are you still wearing this outfit? Isn't this the one I bought for you before?" Shintaro was still wearing the light clothes she had bought for him in early spring, which was still cold. Shintaro smiled and said, "Yes, it's just because you bought it. I couldn't bear to take it off." "Huh, you really know how to talk. I'll take you shopping later." Kurenai pouted, but she couldn't hide the smile on her face. While walking down the main street, Shintaro was often recognized by people. That's Uchiha Shintaro. He's a very talented young man." Similar words came out continuously. Every time Shintaro was recognized, he would greet them gently and humbly. Gentle and humble, this was the personality he had developed since childhood. As long as he wasn't at a disadvantage, he could usually pretend. Moreover, ever since making contact with Minato on the northeastern defense line, Shintaro had begun to mimic him intentionally or unintentionally, always with a gentle and harmless expression on his face. Shintaro walked with Kurenai for a long time and also enjoyed this long-lost leisurely time. The contrast between the bustling streets of Konoha and the brutal battlefield on the border was like two different worlds. Currently, the war in the northeast had subsided, but the western part of Konoha was still suffering from the invasion of Sunagakure. Due to the gap in war preparation between the two countries, even though Konoha's overall national strength was much stronger than Sunagakure's, it was being pressured by Sunagakure's adequate war mobilization and fierce attacks that were not afraid of death. No, right after the war in the northeast ended, the Hokage deployed a large number of troops that had just been withdrawn to the western defense line. The Hokage also wanted Orochimaru to go to the western defense line, but Orochimaru refused on the grounds of developing ninjutsu. Shintaro was thinking about when to go find Orochimaru when a familiar voice came from behind him. "Shintaro, long time no see." "Kakashi, it's been a while." Shintaro knew the identity of the person behind him before turning around. Kakashi's appearance hadn't changed much, but his temperament had become colder and more mature. I've developed a new ninjutsu. Do you want to see it? Kakashi shared the latest news about his ninjutsu as soon as they met. Shintaro smiled brightly and said, "So fast. I want to see your new ninjutsu." He turned to Kurenai and said, "Kurenai, I'm leaving now. Let's go for a walk again later." Kurenai pouted and reluctantly agreed. Shintaro pinched her red cheeks and comforted her. "I'll be back soon. You go home first." Kurenai then left, not forgetting to complain along the way. "Damn Kakashi, I just met Shintaro." Kakashi smiled bitterly and said, "Sorry, I disturbed you and made Kurenai angry." Shintaro patted his shoulder and said, "It's okay. She'll stop being angry after a while. At worst, I'll bring her some gifts later. Come on, I'm eager to see your new jutsu." Kakashi complained, "Don't be too strong, it hurts." Shintaro laughed heartily and said, Sorry, I just came off the battlefield, and my hands are a bit heavy." Kakashi put on his characteristic dead fish eyes, and his cold and mature appearance immediately turned into an expression of helplessness. He was a genius, unreachable by others, but in front of Shintaro, he was just an ordinary friend. But Kakashi was also happy to be like this. At least the distance wasn't too far. He knew in his heart that the gap in strength between him and Shintaro was widening. That's why he couldn't wait to show him the new ninjutsu he had developed, as if he wanted to prove to him that he wasn't falling too far behind. The two came to Konoha's third training ground together. Kakashi stopped about 20 meters in front of a wooden stake. "Show it here," Shintaro asked. "That's right." Kakashi nodded. He then began forming seals. Shintaro opened his 6 eyes and observed carefully. After Kakashi formed 3 seals, a large amount of lightning chakra began to condense in his hand. Blue arcs continuously flickered and gathered in his palm, emitting a loud, screeching sound. The lightning chakra stimulated his body, and Kakashi suddenly rushed towards the wooden stake. Boom, the wooden stake was easily penetrated by him. Kakashi retracted his chakra, and this new technique was finally revealed. Shintaro thoroughly analyzed this new technique with his 6 eyes and said, "This is a good technique. It truly combines the shape transformation and nature transformation of lightning element chakra." Kakashi pulled his hand out of the wooden stake and said, "It can be considered inspired by Minato Sensei's Rasengan." "What's the name of this technique?" Shintaro asked curiously. "Chidori." Kakashi walked toward Shintaro and said, "Because the sound when this technique is performed is like 1,000 birds chirping simultaneously." "Exactly." Shintaro clapped his hands and said, "This technique should be above level A in difficulty. Hokage-sama personally approved it. It's an A-level ninjutsu." Kakashi nodded. "All right, Kakashi is indeed a genius," Shintaro said with a smile. Kakashi self-deprecatingly smiled. "Oh, how ironic coming from you." Shintaro waved his hand and then changed the subject. "When you use this technique, do you feel the speed is too fast?" "It's fine for stationary targets, but not for moving targets." Kakashi was stunned. Then he reacted and said, "You noticed this?" "Yes, there is indeed this problem. Do you have a way to solve it?" "Yes, just give yourself a pair of Sharingan." Shintaro joked with a smile. Kakashi rolled his eyes and said, "Stop joking. Be serious. I'm troubled by this problem." Shintaro then hid his smile and became serious. "The method is very simple, which is to strengthen the nature transformation of a lightning element and use the enhanced nature transformation's power to replace the force brought by high-speed thrust." Kakashi seemed to be in deep thought. This method sounded easy, but it placed high demands on the practitioner. He didn't get any hints in a short time, so he could only remember the method to enhance in this direction. Shintaro formed 3 seals, condensing Chidori in his palm. Kakashi was shocked by this, and an even more surprising scene occurred next. Shintaro released blue light from his other hand, and then the wooden stake that Kakashi had just pierced rose from the ground and flew towards him rapidly. He took advantage of this situation and stabbed Chidori forward, piercing the wooden stake again. "It's a pity I can't teach you blue. Otherwise, letting the enemy approach you at high speed instead of stabbing is also a solution." Kakashi was very surprised to hear this. "It seems you've become even stronger on the battlefield, Shintaro." 101. Orochimaru Shintaro said lightly. You can understand this as my Kekkei Genkai, so I can't teach you. Not to mention Kakashi didn't have cursed energy. Even if he did, the limitless technique wasn't something others could learn. Jujutsu and ninjutsu are different. Ninjutsu can be learned as long as there is chakra, and even people without certain chakra attributes can master it through training to change its properties. This isn't possible with jujutsu. Jujutsu is imprinted in the brain from birth. This means that the innate techniques that a jujutsu sorcerer can use are determined from birth and cannot be learned. The most they can learn is some methods of using cursed techniques. Therefore, the power of a jujutsu sorcerer is basically determined at birth. Of course, Kakashi didn't expect Shintaro to teach him blue. He had no other thought except that he was surprised by the powerful method. Kakashi thought he was still a talented person, and he knew that imitating others wouldn't work. He naturally planned to find his own path. Now that I have seen your new ninjutsu, it's time for me to go, or else Kurenai will be very angry. Shintaro then said goodbye to Kakashi and went to find Kurenai. In the following days, he didn't practice much and ran to Yui's house all day. After struggling for half a year, couldn't he still enjoy it? Of course, enjoyment here refers to eating, drinking, and petting the cat at Yui's house. Nothing more. On Sunday, Shintaro finally went to visit Orochimaru's research institute. The signboard outside the institute hadn't been changed for a long time, and he wasn't sure if Orochimaru was inside. Shintaro entered the research institute and felt the other's aura. When he went down and arrived inside the research institute, Orochimaru was already waiting in front. I knew it was you, Shintaro-kun. It seems you haven't forgotten your long-lost assistant mission. He smiled and licked his lips. Shintaro said calmly, "Of course, I wouldn't dare forget Orochimaru-sama's task. With Shintaro-kun's current strength, I'm afraid I can't bear the word, sama," Orochimaru said while staring at him. Shintaro teased, "All right, Orochimaru-kun." Orochimaru stuck out his tongue like a snake and licked his lips again, saying in a magnetic voice, "You are indeed very interesting, Shintaro-kun." He turned and walked further into the research institute. "Follow me. Do you want to know what our research is this time?" Orochimaru asked while walking. Shintaro guessed. Is it the next stage of software transformation? He used the 6 eyes to find some faint signs of transformation on Orochimaru's body. But Orochimaru shook his head and said, "Compared to our current research, the software transformation is not worth mentioning." Shintaro was a bit curious about this and asked, "Since it's such powerful research, I'm afraid it involves confidentiality. Why do you want me to know?" Orochimaru turned to him and said, "I told you, because you are very interesting, Shintaro-kun." Shintaro came to the laboratory and found a living person tied to the operating table. He was dark-skinned and must be a Kumogakure ninja. It seemed Orochimaru hadn't forgotten his experiments while on the northeastern defense line, and he hadn't forgotten to tie some experimental subjects back to himself. The entire body of the Kumogakure ninja was restrained, and something was inserted into his mouth. When he looked up and saw Orochimaru, his eyes widened with an expression of horror. Orochimaru smiled and said to the test subject, "Don't be afraid, it will be over soon." After he said this, he took out a syringe containing a light green solution. This solution contained very strong vitality and chakra, and Shintaro also felt that this solution contained chakra attributes he had never seen before, which seemed to be a Kekkei Genkai. Orochimaru, wearing a white coat, approached the test subject. Despite the evil smile on his face and the test subject's reaction of fear, he looked like a doctor saving lives and healing the wounded. He injected the solution in the syringe into the test subject's arm vein, then retreated a few steps. The test subject struggled harder, and his restraints almost came off. But soon, the test subject's movements became more rigid. Then, with a loud crack, a lush tree grew from the test subject's arm. The tree's roots cruelly used the test subject's flesh and blood as nutrients to grow rampantly. The test subject died instantly, and blood splattered on Orochimaru. Orochimaru turned around, his white coat stained with blood, and there were bloodstains on his face, making him look very evil. "Can you guess what this is?" He looked at him playfully. Shintaro replied, "Could it be the first Hokages would release?" "Yes, It is the first Hokage's would release. Orochimaru nodded, wiped the blood off his face, and said, I bred the first Hokage Senju Hashirama cells to make a solution and injected it into test subjects, hoping to successfully create ninjas who could use wood release. However, the power of the wood release from Hashirama cells is too overwhelming. No one has survived after the cell transplant. Shintaro now also had a bit of scientific knowledge and offered his own opinion. Maybe it's because of rejection. What if it were cultivated from an early age? Same. Orochimaru shook his head, then looked at him and asked, Shintaro-kun, do you still remember when Kyuubi almost broke its seal? Shintaro nodded and said, Of course I remember. Then you should understand how powerful Kyuubi is. Orochimaru sighed. The other Bijou are not on the same level as Kyuubi. I once sneaked into Kumogakure village and released Hachibi, and it went on a rampage. Although Hachibi's power could be called a natural disaster, it was not as good as Kyuubi. You have also had contact with Hachibi and defeated Hachibi. You should be able to distinguish between Hachibi and Kyuubi. Shintaro nodded and said, Indeed, although Hachibi is strong, it is not as good as Kyuubi. So, Kyuubi has always been a double-edged sword hanging over Konoha's head. Orochimaru said, So more than 10 years ago, Sarutobi-sensei wanted to reproduce the first Hokage's would release to suppress Kyuubi. Shintaro showed a surprised expression and said, So, it seems Orochimaru-sama is contributing to the village. Orochimaru smiled and continued. It's just that all the previous would release test subjects cultivated from infancy died, so the experiment was indefinitely suspended. The current experiment is a collaboration between Danzo and me. Shintaro asked from the side, Are you allowed to tell me about this? Orochimaru said, You are my assistant. It's okay for you to know about this. This experiment might be very difficult, so I need your help, Shintaro-kun. 102. Revealing secrets, Shintaro agreed to it casually, as there wasn't much happening lately. As a jonin, he couldn't take on daily missions due to the impact of war mobilization and was always on standby to fight on the front lines. So, besides spending time with Kurenai, he usually didn't do much. Shintaro planned to spend the next period training at Orochimaru's research institute. After Orochimaru saw him agree, he slightly raised his eyebrows and said, Shintaro-kun, I look forward to working with you. Happy to work with you. Although Shintaro's task was still to assist him, his status had been upgraded from assistant to partner. The two then conducted a series of experiments on Hashirama cells in the institute. After finishing today's work, Shintaro returned home. It was the residence of the Uchiha Clan, not the Yuhi residence. Hikaru stopped in front of the door and stared at Shintaro, chirping several times unpleasantly. I'm back. Shintaro reached out to catch Hikaru in his arms, patted his head, and let him fly away. Then he pushed open the door and entered the house. He packed his clothes and suitcase, put them in a backpack, and took them to Yuhi's house. Shintaro, what are you doing? Kurenai saw the large and small bags in his hands and wondered. Shintaro walked in calmly, put away his luggage, and said, I'm planning to move into your house. My place is too far from the training ground and Orochimaru's research institute. Besides, I have to run to your place every day anyway. Kurenai's face immediately turned red with embarrassment. Living together? Right. Shintaro nodded and said, although he originally came every day, it was different from living together. So Kurenai's reaction was very reasonable. She blushed and complained. You came? Why didn't you tell me? Shintaro put away his luggage and said with a smile, I knew you wouldn't refuse. Who said I wouldn't refuse. Get out. Kurenai scolded and wanted to kick him out. Shintaro laughed a few times and was kicked out of the house by Kurenai. He was able to fight fiercely with Hachibi from morning till night and forcibly kill Hachibi. The door was shut by Kurenai. Hey, my luggage is still in there. The door opened again, and Shintaro's luggage was thrown out. Then I'll sleep in front of your house. Shintaro shouted, then lay down on spot. Kurenai tiptoed behind the door and looked through the peephole. When she saw Shintaro actually lying on the ground, she immediately opened the door. Why are you so stupid? Get up quickly, the ground is so dirty. When Shintaro heard this, He immediately stood up, turned around, and said, "It's not dirty." "Why is it dirty?" His whole body was spotless. Kurenai was surprised and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Shintaro walked straight into the house, picked up the sugar from the ground, and started playing with the cat. Kurenai picked up the luggage on the floor and put it in her house and said, "You can stay in the guest room. No one has lived there all year. It needs to be cleaned." "All right, I can clean it." Shintaro turned around and replied with Shiro in his arms. Then he put the sugar on the ground, and the sugar disappeared in an instant. He turned to Kurenai and said, "Let me answer the question you just asked." Shintaro pulled her to sit on the sofa, raised his right hand, and said, "Here, extend your hand." "Huh?" Kurenai looked puzzled. Come on, come on," Shintaro urged, shaking his palm. Kurenai raised her eyes and looked into his eyes. He clearly didn't look like a hooligan, so she extended her hand and leaned forward hesitantly. At this moment, strangely, her palm stopped within range. "What's happening? Why can't I touch it?" Kurenai opened her mouth in surprise. Shintaro smiled and patiently explained, "Precisely, what you encountered is infinity between you and me." "Why did my hand stop?" Kurenai didn't quite understand what infinity meant. Rather than stopping, it should be said that the closer you get to me, the slower it becomes. Shintaro continued to explain, "But I can touch you." He intertwined his fingers with her. Kurenai instantly reacted from her hesitation, blushing, extending her hand, and cursing, "I knew you'd act like a gangster. I did this just to show you." Shintaro defended himself with a smile while leaning forward to look at her. Kurenai looked into his eyes in confusion. Shintaro added, "And these eyes, they can see many things. Both were originally my secrets, but I still chose to tell you." Kurenai felt trust in his words and was slightly moved. Shintaro said sincerely, "Because I feel these things can't always be hidden from you, and now I'm strong enough to protect you and keep this secret. Of course, there are some specific details. I think the time hasn't come yet, but I'll definitely tell you everything in the future." Kurenai nodded and said, "I always knew you had secrets. I've known since we were kids." Shintaro smiled, pinched her soft, red cheek, and said, "As expected of my desk mate." "Tsh, then Asuma and Anko are also your desk mates." Kurenai joked, "Ha ha ha, they're different from you." Shintaro laughed and then explained. Kurenai asked, "Oh, what's different?" "I like you, but I don't like them." His straightforward words shocked Kurenai. When she heard the words, "I like you," her face turned red. "No, I'm not talking to you anymore. I'll prepare dinner." Kurenai ran to the kitchen in a panic and started preparing dinner for today. Shintaro looked at her back and laughed, then leaned back on the sofa and comfortably waited for dinner tonight. Tonight's dinner was pickled wasabi octopus and grilled pork tonkatsu ramen. When the fragrance came, Shintaro opened his eyes and walked to the dining table to sit down. He rested his head on one hand on the table and watched Kurenai's busy figure. Kurenai first served the octopus and ramen on the table, then went to feed Shiro cat food. Then she walked back to the dining table and saw Shintaro looking at her with a smile on his face. Kurenai was very angry. "He says he likes me, but he doesn't even help me." She opened the chair and sat down, then said, "I'll definitely do it next time. Since we're all here now, I'll have plenty of time to help you in the future." "Oomph." Kurenai snorted and lowered her head to eat the noodles. Shintaro picked up the chopsticks and put the octopus into Kurenai's bowl and said gently, "Don't you like eating this? Eat more." Kurenai's voice was as soft as a mosquito. After eating, Shintaro helped clean up the dining table, washed the dishes, then went upstairs to tidy his room. Tonight, for some reason, he slept very soundly. He slept until the sun was high the next day. Shintaro was knocked on the door by Kurenai and asked to come down for breakfast. "Good morning, Kurenai." Kurenai looked down and greeted, "Good morning." 103. Kakashi's promotion. After they finished breakfast, Kurenai returned to the kitchen with the plates and chopsticks to clean them, while Shintaro crouched in the living room, petting the cat. A moment later, Shintaro turned and looked out the door. Then the doorbell rang. Kurenai called out loudly from the kitchen, "Who is it?" Shintaro was already walking over to open the door. "It's me, Noera Rin." He opened the door and saw Rin standing there. Rin looked surprised to see Shintaro. "Shintaro, Long time no see. What are you doing here? Could it be? Rin then showed a mysterious smile. You? Shintaro simply smiled and nodded. At this moment, Kurenai finished cleaning the plates, ran to the door with small steps, and pulled Shintaro away. Then she smiled awkwardly and said, "It's not what you think. He's just staying at my house temporarily." Rin looked at Kurenai's panicked explanation, then at Shintaro, who was being pulled away. She immediately covered her mouth and giggled. Kurenai quickly changed the subject and asked, "Rin, why did you come to see us this morning?" Rin finally got to business and said, "Kakashi is going to be promoted to Jonin soon, and I'm arranging for everyone to gather and celebrate at noon. I wanted to know if you have time." Shintaro and Kurenai were surprised to hear this. The only people who could make Rin so enthusiastic and come to see them in the morning were Kakashi and Obito. "Yes, of course, we'll be there." Kurenai agreed on behalf of herself and Shintaro. So Rin happily smiled and told them the specific time and place for the gathering at noon, then left to inform the next person. Kurenai then closed the door, turned to Shintaro, and said, "Let's go out and buy a gift for Kakashi later. We need to show our sincerity." "Then why didn't you buy me a gift when I was promoted?" Shintaro joked. Kurenai lightly punched him and said, annoyed, "You still dare to say that? The news of your death and your promotion to Jonin happened at the same time. How could I bear to congratulate you? Luckily, you didn't die," Kurenai said as tears began to fall again. Seeing himself in trouble, Shintaro hugged Kurenai's shoulders and gently wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Okay, I'm living a good life." Kurenai stopped crying and said seriously, "You mustn't die when you go to the battlefield again." Shintaro laughed heartily. "What? If I die next time, will you kill me?" "Yes, if you dare to die, I'll kill you." Kurenai didn't realize the logic for a moment and said in one breath, "Ha ha." Suddenly, Shintaro laughed heartily. Only then did Kurenai react, but she replied, "I'm serious. I won't let you die." Okay, I promise. Next time I won't die." Shintaro agreed wholeheartedly. The two then packed up at home and went out to get a gift. Kakashi likes fish, so let's just give him 2 salted fish. Shintaro seriously thought about this gift and felt it was okay. Kurenai said helplessly, "Anyway, it's a promotion gift, so it should be more formal, right? Don't you know Kakashi? What else does he like?" Kurenai wanted to find a more reliable answer. After thinking for a moment, Shintaro finally found a suitable choice. By the way, Kakashi also likes to read books. Kurenai thought this was a good idea, so the two went to the bookstore together. As soon as Shintaro entered the bookstore, he saw a promotional slogan, "Big sale on the entire Intimate Paradise series. The whole collection is only 1,000 Ryo." He suddenly remembered something. Guy seems to have mentioned that Kakashi likes Ica Paradise the most. Ica Paradise? Kurenai felt this didn't sound like a serious book. Shintaro walked to the promotion area and picked up a book to read. Then a smile immediately appeared on his face. Kurenai curiously poked her head over to take a look. Shintaro closed his red eyes and said, "This book is for men, and you're not suitable to read it." Kurenai angrily bit Shintaro's finger and said, "If you don't let me see it, I will." As a result, she didn't know what to see. When she saw it, she blushed and said, What is this? This book is just hooliganism." She was speechless when she saw some marginal words in the book. Kurenai started blaming Shintaro again. "If you take out this kind of book and let me read it, you're also acting like a hooligan. Don't falsely accuse a good person. I stopped you. You insisted on seeing it yourself." Shintaro defended. I don't care." Kurenai turned around. Shintaro truly felt that women were unreasonable creatures. "Aren't there any more serious books?" Kurenai asked again. Shintaro remembered a book Minato had read before and said, "Minato-sensei once read a book called Dakanjo Ninden. It should be available here." Kurenai said, "This one sounds more serious." So Shintaro bought a complete set of Ica Paradise, and Kurenai bought a copy of Dakanjo Ninden. Then they walked around and saw that time was almost up before heading to their destination. Under the cherry blossom tree in Konoha Park, a spiky-haired boy wearing a forehead protector and orange goggles held a bouquet of roses and stood waiting under the tree with an excited expression. I must confess my true feelings to Rin today. This boy was naturally Obito. Obito cheered himself on as Rin ran from a distance, waving her hand. Sorry I'm late. Hearing this, Obito immediately smiled shyly, waved his hand, and said, "It's okay." Everyone. Rin clasped her hands together, smiled, and tilted her head to apologize. Everyone. Obito realized something was wrong. He thought Rin had asked him out on a date. Under the cherry blossom tree beside them, Shintaro and Kurenai, who had just arrived, walked over. Walking from the other side were Suma, Guy, Gunma, and Ebisu. In addition to inviting the 3 members of Team 8 who were closest to Team 7, Rin also invited Team 3, which Guy was part of. Gunma and Ebisu were Guy's teammates. Obito asked in confusion, "Why is everyone here?" "I called everyone here just to discuss how to celebrate." Rin said with a smile. "What are we discussing about celebrating?" Obito still didn't know why. "Isn't Kakashi about to officially become a Jonin? So I thought our classmates could send some gifts together." Rin said while handing out papers that read classmates celebrate Kakashi's promotion to Jonin, secret mission. It seemed Rin was very interested in Kakashi's promotion. Kakashi is becoming a Jonin. Obito held the paper, lost in thought. "Obito, did you know? As classmates, we all feel very proud," Rin said with a bright smile. When Obito heard this, the roses hidden behind him couldn't help but fall. Shintaro watched all this and silently lamented Obito's tragic experience. It seemed this year's Chunin exam had not yet begun, and Obito was still a genin. Kurenai then approached Rin with a book and said, "Shintaro and I already bought our gifts." With a surprised expression on her face, Rin turned her attention and started chatting happily with Kurenai. Shintaro quietly walked over to Obito and said sympathetically, "Obito, don't cry too much when you get home." Obito couldn't help but feel moved when he saw the winner in life before him understanding his state of mind so well. Shintaro patted his shoulder and said nothing. 104. Hollow Technique. Purple Rin and Kurenai discussed and decided to let everyone buy gifts together and visit Kakashi's house today. Rin had already asked, and Kakashi would be home today. Everyone said they would leave, but Obito kicked a rose behind him and came to Rin. "Sorry, I have to go. I'm taking the Chunin exam soon, so I won't be coming along." Then he ran off without saying another word. Rin wanted to catch up and persuade him, but she couldn't leave this group of people alone, so she had no choice but to give up. She sighed as she watched Obito like this, but there was nothing she could do. She accompanied everyone to buy gifts first. Rin planned to make her own gift, so she didn't buy anything on the way. Everyone bought their own gifts. It should be mentioned that Guy bought a pair of training weights, which could be considered the most unique gift. Kakashi was cooking at home at noon. Suddenly, 7 uninvited guests came to the house, and his dead fish eyes lit up again. "What's going on?" He looked at Rin, who was smiling brightly and congratulating him. "Kakashi, congratulations on your promotion." Only then did Kakashi react and say, "I just received the notification. Forget it. Since you're all here, stay and eat. I'll take out all the dishes from the fridge and cook them." Shintaro looked at the 2 fish in the kitchen and sighed that the other party still loved fish very much. Kakashi then gestured for a few people to put down the gifts, but when his eyes glanced at the Ica paradise in Shintaro's hands, his pupils shook. He looked up and met his eyes, seeing Shintaro showing an expression that everyone would understand. Kakashi immediately took the complete set of Ica paradise with understanding and stored it in his study. After storing the Ica paradise collection, his attitude towards cooking became more positive. He took out all the ingredients from the fridge and cooked a lavish meal for the table. A few people enjoyed eating and drinking. After eating and drinking, everyone left happily. After Shintaro and Kurenai strolled around the village for a while, they parted ways. Shintaro planned to go to the training ground to practice, while Kurenai went home to feed her cat. Because the ninjutsu Shintaro planned to practice was too powerful, he chose the most remote training ground. But he didn't expect someone to already be there. They had just had dinner at Kakashi's house and parted ways at noon, and maybe an hour had passed. Good afternoon, Shintaro. Are you here to exercise too? Guy asked while standing on his head. He was doing one-finger handstand push-ups with weights, which even for a ninja was not something an ordinary person could do. I'm here to practice ninjutsu. Shintaro shook his head slightly. Guy expressed his regret and said, "What a pity. I originally wanted to do some passionate youthful training with you." Shintaro smiled and said, "There will be opportunities in the future." Then he deliberately distanced himself from Guy so they wouldn't disturb each other. He then produced a normal-sized Rasengan in his hand and began experimenting with blue. The blue Rasengan, the size of an egg, quickly formed. Shintaro felt dissatisfied and continued compressing it. The blue Rasengan kept shrinking, and when it reached the size of a coin, the center of the blue Rasengan in his hand had already started turning red. As it continued to shrink, the blue Rasengan became fully dyed red. Shintaro named it Red Rasengan. He wanted to keep compressing it, but he didn't expect the red Rasengan to explode, causing a huge blast. Flames shot into the sky, and a radius of tens of meters was flattened. This movement even caught the attention of the Konoha police force. Fortunately, they were all members of the Konoha police force. After Shintaro explained a few words, several Uchiha Clan members who had arrived withdrew. Guy beside him was also stunned. He first admired Shintaro's genius, that the half-finished ninjutsu he was developing could be so powerful. Then he saw his injured palm, fell silent, and then muttered, "Can I reach such power with the physical skills I've trained so hard for?" Shintaro walked over and encouraged him. "Yes, I believe in the power of your burning youth." After opening Hashiman, Guy was inspired and immediately nodded, then asked, "Shintaro, which gate of Hashiman have you opened?" Shintaro replied honestly, "I haven't practiced much recently. I've only opened the 5th gate." Guy, who studied hard every day but only reached the 4th gate, fell silent again. "Well, a genius is a genius. However, I believe hard work can surpass genius. Shintaro, I will definitely prove it to you." Guy encouraged himself again and started doubling the training program for today. Do 2,000 handstand one-finger push-ups. If I can't finish it, run 10,000 laps around the field. He often exercised all day long. After all, compared to ninjutsu and jinjutsu, taijutsu required a lot of effort and was slow to yield results. Only taijutsu ninjas like I spent so much time training taijutsu every day. Shintaro also continued his training, and this time the distance was very far. From the explosion just now, he felt the potential to continue compressing the blue Rasengan. If combined with the Limitless technique to form the maximum, it could be very powerful. The maximum is the name of the spell for jujitsu sorcerers besides domain expansion. Generally, only special grade jujitsu sorcerers could use the maximum. Shintaro began developing. His concentrated appearance was very similar to Minato's when he initially developed the Rasengan. Except Minato at least had Jiraiya enlightening him, while Shintaro had to figure out by himself. Compressing the Rasengan with blue wasn't difficult. The hard part was controlling and maintaining the form of the Rasengan without collapsing. Even with the 6 eyes, this was still a challenging task. If not careful, he would fail and fail. Time passed day by day, and Shintaro was now living at Kurenai's house. He usually ran between Kurenai's house and the training ground on Sundays, and went to Orochimaru's research institute to work as an assistant. 3 months passed, and finally, Shintaro made a major breakthrough. Still at the original training ground, Guy and Shintaro trained separately from a distance. In Shintaro's hand, the originally large blue Rasengan was quickly compressed to the size of a coin. The color of the Rasengan changed from the original blue to dark blue, from dark blue to red, and finally from red to pitch black. It looked somewhat similar to the Bijidama, but in essence it was very different. The Bijidama was a product of concentrated yin and yang chakra, but the dark ball in front of him had no chakra attributes attached to it. It was a product of chakra and cursed energy. It was a new ninjutsu and also a cursed technique. Shintaro used blue to compress and red to launch it, and then the coin-sized ball quickly flew toward the distant hill. Boom, the hills were instantly flattened. Guy in the distance was speechless seeing this scene, and the Konoha police force was once again alerted. Shintaro, on the other hand, stood calmly and thought of a name for this move. Hollow technique. Purple 105. The Jonin meeting. Shintaro, was it you who just performed that jutsu? Guy ran over and asked incredulously. Shintaro nodded and replied, of course, I've been practicing this jutsu for the past few months. It only took a few months to create such a powerful jutsu. Hearing this, Guy felt embarrassed. His training over the past few months had only resulted in limited increases in strength, while the other person training in the same place had made rapid progress. This is genius. Once again, he felt the deep gap between himself and a genius. Shintaro could see what Guy was thinking and patted him on the shoulder without saying anything. But anyway, Guy was Guy, the boy who was always youthful and full of passion. Guy cheered up in the face of this gap and turned it into his own inner motivation. It seems I have to work harder in the future. Shintaro looked at him and thought to himself, a person like this will never have low achievements in any world. At that moment, a group of Uchiha Clan members from the Konoha police force arrived. It exploded again. It was Shintaro, right? He really is the #1 genius of the Uchiha Clan. A group of people were walking and discussing the explosion. Shintaro stepped forward and said, sorry, I was just experimenting with a new ninjutsu, and it was a bit stronger. The leader was Uchiha Yashiro. He smiled and said, it's fine. We were just doing a routine check. If there's no problem, it's okay. By the way, the captain is looking for you. He's at the police headquarters. The captain referred to Uchiha Fugaku. Fugaku was the leader of the Uchiha clan and the captain of the Konoha police force. Okay, I'll go there now. Shintaro agreed immediately and went to the Konoha police headquarters after parting ways with Guy. There was a large emblem of the Uchiha clan hanging on the police headquarters building. Shintaro looked up and walked in. As a member of the Uchiha clan, he wasn't like anyone else in the police force. No one would stop him. The police force was entirely made up of Uchiha clan members, including ninjas and regular employees. It was said that this rule was a legacy from the time of the second Hokage. According to Shintaro, the second Hokage's intention might have been very complicated. On one hand, giving the Uchiha clan a stable position meant almost every Uchiha member could have a job, and the treatment wasn't bad. But on the other hand, being in the police force for a long time without exposure to real combat, although protective, would also weaken the Uchiha clan's strength. Moreover, the Sharingan was almost always activated on the battlefield. Therefore, for Konoha's top leadership, handing over the police force to the Uchiha clan was a very clever move. Of course, from the Uchiha clan's perspective, this might not be a good thing. Shintaro arrived at the office of the security force captain, knocked on the door, and entered. Patriarch. While working, just call me Captain. Captain. After a brief conversation, Fugaku asked Shintaro to sit in front of him. How are you doing? Have you developed your ninjutsu? Yes, it's just been developed. I heard it leveled a mountain. Its power is truly terrifying. What's its name? Purple. That's very simple. The two chatted a few more words about the newly developed ninjutsu, and finally, Fugaku started to get back to the main topic. I'm here to see you for today's Jonin meeting. Fugaku said. Shintaro asked confusedly. Jonin meeting? Yes, the Uchiha clan has 2 spots, and I'm bringing you to participate. Fugaku nodded. Why is there suddenly a Jonin meeting? There aren't many Jonin left in the village now. Precisely because of the shortage of manpower, we have to discuss who should be sent to fight. Fugaku's eyes showed a strange expression. Is Kumobikure coming again? Or does facing Sunagakure require reinforcements? During this period, besides training, Shintaro also researched a lot with Orochimaru about the current battlefield situation. No, it's Kirigakure. Fugaku shook his head and said, Kirigakure? Weren't they fighting Sunagakure? According to Shintaro's understanding of the battlefield situation, Sunagakure was fighting on 3 fronts with Iwagakure, Konoha, and Kirigakure. Kirigakure was also involved in Sunagakure's crazy attacks like Konoha. Fugaku explained, Kirigakure is in the land of water by the sea. Sunagakure has no way to attack Kirigakure, so Kirigakure can split its forces to attack Konoha. Furthermore, Kirigakure's current strategy is to send small elite troops to continually harass and loot the coastal wealth of the Land of Fire. They behave like pirates. Even if they defeat Konoha, they can't invade Kirigakure's mainland. In this battle, they will surely profit without losing anything. The troops led by Jiraiya-sama don't have enough strength, and the battle line is too long. It's easy for Kirigakure to break through the defense line with elite troops. If Kirigakure is allowed to penetrate deep into the Land of Fire, or even approach Konoha, it will damage our morale. The main discussion at this Jonin meeting is to determine the candidate to lead reinforcements to strengthen the southeastern defense line. Hearing this, Shintaro roughly understood the current situation. So, Captain wants the Uchiha Clan to take charge of the reinforcements. Fugaku nodded, then shook his head and said, "That's not what I mean. It's what the Uchiha Clan members mean." "I understand." So Shintaro and Fugaku attended this Jonin meeting. In the conference room in the Hokage building, most of Konoha's current combat forces above the Jonin level were gathered. Everyone sat around a long table. Konoha's 4 senior members, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Shimura Danzo, Mitokado Hamura, and Uchiha Koharu, sat at the front. Then there were the elders of the Hyuga clan, Hyuga Tokuyo, and his son Hyuga Tsukisho. The leader of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Fugaku, and the recently famous Uchiha Shintaro. Also present were elders from the Nara, Yamanaka, and Akimichi clans, as well as representatives from the Inuzuka clan, Aburame clan, and other clans. Behind them were Minato and a group of civilian Jonin. Konoha is now in a crisis. I won't say much more. I just want to ask, who can lead the remaining mobilizable forces of the village to the southeastern defense line to consolidate the defense? Hiruzen put his hands on the table and clasped them together, asking directly to the point. He looked down, and his majesty as Hokage was fully revealed at this moment. Minato immediately stood up and said, "Hokage-sama, I am willing to fight." Hiruzen showed a pleased expression and praised. "As expected of Minato, you are responsible for this reinforcement. But Minato, your qualifications are still relatively low. I'm afraid you still need assistance." Hearing this, Fugaku immediately seized the opportunity and said, "The Uchiha clan is willing to take the lead." "No!" Danzo suddenly slammed the table, stopping Fugaku and said, "The Uchiha clan is also responsible for the police force. How can they leave their post without permission?" Shintaro was beside Fugaku, watching everything happening at the table with cold eyes. 106. Back to the battlefield. Danzo and Fugaku confronted each other. Shintaro noticed that Hiruzen, standing silently beside Danzo, was Danzo's trusted ally. However, Fugaku also held his ground. He said, "It is wartime now. The police force must help Konoha solve its problems. Some of its troops can be allocated to support the front lines. Konoha also needs the strength of the Uchiha clan." Hearing this, Danzo turned to Hiruzen and said, "I propose that the Hyuga clan lead the reinforcements while the Uchiha clan stays in Konoha to guard the garrison." Hiruzen then looked at Hyuga Tokuyo and asked, "Does the Hyuga clan still have enough strength to lead the troops?" Tokuyo spoke up, "Although the Patriarch and some clan members are stationed on the northeastern defense line. The Hyuga clan is a major clan of Konoha, so of course we still have the capability to lead reinforcements and share Konoha's burden." Fugaku immediately countered Tokuyo. "What can the Hyuga clan do on the front lines? Besides seeing a few kilometers further, it would be better to bring a few more pairs of binoculars." "Uchiha Fugaku, don't be so arrogant." Hyuga Tsukisho, Tokuyo's son, stood up, slammed the table, pointed at Fugaku, and angrily shouted. Fugaku crossed his arms, revealing his 3-tomo Sharingan, and his aura was so overwhelming that it frightened Tsukisho instantly. Ignoring Tsukisho, Fugaku addressed Tokuyo. "The Uchiha clan is very strong. We are all elite ninjas with many talented individuals. Did you know that Shintaro beside me once defeated the Hachibi of Kimobikure, the newly developed ninjutsu is even more powerful than the tailed beast bomb. Fugaku pulled Shintaro forward, and Shintaro just watched, somehow involved in this war of words. As the Uchiha Clan and Hyuga Clan continued to clash and the scene grew tense, Hiruzen stood up, exuding the authority of the Hokage, and said, "What are you all talking about? What kind of place do you think this is?" One of you slaps the table, and the other glares. "Why not just use your words?" "All right, I made my decision. This time, we will strengthen the Southeast. Minato will be the supreme commander, and the Hyuga Clan and Uchiha Clan will jointly assist and lead 2,000 ninjas to consolidate the southeastern defense line." Danzo was about to protest, saying the Uchiha Clan cannot advance to the front lines. "That's enough, Danzo. I am the Hokage." Hiruzen's words silenced Danzo. Half of the Konoha police force will remain, and the other half will follow the troops to the front lines. The remaining police duties will be temporarily filled with assignments. Fugaku replied with satisfaction, "Thank you, Hokage-sama, for making this possible." He glanced at Shintaro beside him and smiled. Sure enough, bringing Shintaro here was the right move. The higher-ups are indeed afraid of Shintaro's strength. Hiruzen then announced the list of other selected jonin, and the meeting was adjourned. Shintaro followed Fugaku to the Uchiha Clan station. "Shintaro, this time the Uchiha Clan can advance to the front lines as a single clan unit. Do you know what this means?" "A great service." Shintaro answered Fugaku's sudden question. "More than that, after rendering meritorious service, we can prove that the Uchiha Clan not only excels as police, but is also qualified for other tasks. This way, we can break the shackles placed on the Uchiha Clan since the time of the second Hokage." Fugaku's eyes were full of hope, but Shintaro disagreed with this idea in his heart. This time was indeed a concession from Konoha's higher-ups. After all, it was wartime, and Konoha desperately needed the strength of the Uchiha Clan. After this, the higher-ups would definitely find ways to continue restricting the Uchiha Clan within the police force. There was a high possibility that the old methods could not be used as an excuse, and they would continue to weaken and exclude the Uchiha Clan. This time Hiruzen stood up and played the good guy, but might not happen again. With Danzo's thoughts and methods, he was probably thinking about how to deal with the Uchiha Clan right now. However, Shintaro did not reveal his inner thoughts. He nodded silently, seemingly agreeing with Fugaku's point of view. Fugaku arrived at the Uchiha Clan station and first came to his house to invite Shintaro to discuss the expedition. Mikoto made tea for both of them, and Fugaku and Shintaro sat on the tatami, drinking tea and chatting. This time, 2-year-old Itachi came. "Hello, Shintaro Nisan." Itachi smiled, and his delicate face made it hard to distinguish between male and female for a moment. "Hello." Shintaro turned and greeted. Mikoto quickly came and took Itachi away. She instructed him, saying, "Itachi, don't disturb your father's and Shintaro's discussion." Itachi nodded obediently and said, "I know, Mom. I just came to say hello." Mikoto smiled gently and poked Itachi's forehead. "I know you're wise." Seeing this expression of maternal kindness and filial piety, Shintaro could only sigh. When you have a son, he should be like Itachi. "Captain, your son is truly outstanding. You're still very young. What can you tell? 3 years old is a big deal." "Huh, Itachi is only 2 years old. Okay, let's not talk about him anymore. Shintaro, what kind of people should we send to the front lines for support?" Fugaku raised the topic again and asked Shintaro's opinion. "I want to transfer all the elites. What do you think?" Shintaro understood that the other party was eager to perform meritorious deeds, but he stopped after thinking for a moment. "Captain, this is inappropriate." "Why?" "Although this would give us more room to maneuver on the battlefield, the strength of the Konoha police force would be too depleted. If something unexpected happens in the village, the higher-ups, especially Danzo, will definitely take the opportunity to criticize it. This would harm the Uchiha Clan." Fugaku, being a wise man, quickly realized this. Indeed, this is something Danzo could do. Given the current situation of the Uchiha Clan, Unfortunately, no mistake is more important than merit. He sighed, looking disappointed. Seeing this, Shintaro said, "We can proportionally adjust half of the Genin, Chunin, and Jonin. This can form a multi-level force on the battlefield and also provide enough experience to the juniors of the Uchiha clan. This might not be a problem." Fugaka nodded and said, "Since we can't use all our elites, this is the best way. I'll make the list tonight. Do you have any specific requirements?" Shintaro smiled and said, "Include Tetsuo and Hamasu. They are my subordinates. Don't worry, they're not members of the police and can freely form a team." Fugaku raised his hand slightly and said, "In that case, I have no other requirements." Thus, Shintaro and Fugaku parted ways. The next day, Fugaku announced the list, and the people of the Uchiha clan eagerly awaited it. All the Uchiha clan ninjas wanted to go to the battlefield and contribute, so those who were not selected were quite disappointed, while those who were selected were happy. As for Shintaro, he stayed at Kurenai's house to spend the last day together before heading off to war. After that, he set off again, this time towards the southeast of the Land of Fire. 107. Garrison, there are 3,000 troops led by Jiraiya in the southeast of Konoha, plus 2,000 reinforcements currently led by Minato, making a total of 5,000 troops. Judging by the numbers, this seems equivalent to the strength of the northeastern defense line during the war between Konoha and Kimogakure. However, the two situations are vastly different. In the northeastern defense line, Konoha guards the narrow path between the Land of Frost and the Land of Hot Water. If Kimogakure attacks from the land, they can only go through here. As long as they hold the line, not just one person but even 10,000 people could not break through. However, the southeastern defense line is a long coastline, and its depth encompasses the entire interior of the Land of Fire, so the troops have to be dispersed. Therefore, 5,000 troops are actually far from sufficient. But there is no choice. Konoha has already sent most of its soldiers. There are 10,000 troops on the western front against Sunagakure, 2,000 troops left in the northwest to defend against Awagakure, 2,000 troops left in the northeast to defend against Kimogakure, and only 5,000 troops remain in the southeast. If the battle continues, Konoha will have to deploy the reserve ninjas left in the village. The troops arrived at the headquarters of the southeastern defense line. Minato temporarily stationed the troops and took Fugaku, Tokuyo, and Sakisho to the camp where Jiraiya was located. So, with Minato, Jiraiya seemed to be reading some books at first, but when he saw Minato enter, he immediately put them back in the drawer and hid them. "Jiraiya-sensei, what's the situation?" Minato asked directly. "My situation is very good. I can eat 3 bowls of rice in one meal," Jiraiya said with amusement. Minato laughed, then said, "Jiraiya-sensei, seriously, what's the situation on the battlefield?" Jiraiya then became serious, stood up, and said, "The battlefield is not good. The battle line is too long. The 3,000 people under my command are not enough. Even if we add the 2,000 reinforcements deployed by the old man, they're still far from consolidating the southeastern defense line. Kirigakure has 2 attack directions. One is to use the Land of Waves in the east as a springboard to harass the eastern coast of our country. The other way is to attack the southern interior of our country from the ruins of the Land of Whirlpools in the south of our country. It is very difficult to defend from both directions." Jiraiya shook his head wryly and suddenly asked, "By the way, why didn't Orochimaru come?" Minato scratched his head and replied vaguely, "Orochimaru-sama didn't even come to the Jonin meeting. Something must be wrong." Shintaro knew that Orochimaru's research had entered a breakthrough period, so he was naturally reluctant to leave his research institute. Jiraiya sighed and expressed his regret. "It's a pity. I lost one of my combat abilities." Minato looked at Shintaro at this time and said to Jiraiya, "I think Shintaro can stand alone. He made a great contribution on the northeastern defense line. I believe he can make the same contribution this time." "I've heard that too." Jiraiya suddenly came over, grabbed Shintaro's hand, and said, "Defeating Hachibi alone and forcing Kimogakure's troops to retreat. You have a bright future." Shintaro was a bit embarrassed by the other's familiarity. After a few more conversations, Jiraiya arranged the reinforcement tasks. Minato led 1,000 troops to the garrison of the southern defense line of the Land of Fire, and the Uchiha Clan and Hyuga Clan each led 500 troops to the garrison of the eastern defense line of the Land of Fire. Then these people led their troops to the garrison at the location for which they were responsible. The two clans were placed on the outermost parts of the entire defense line, consolidating the defense line and responsible for reconnaissance and vigilance. The two forces were like horns to each other and could also watch over each other. Shintaro arrived at the garrison location, and beside him were his 3 team members, Sarutobi Asuma, Uchiha Tetsuo, and Uchiha Hamasu. Needless to say, Tetsuo and Hamasu were both members of the Uchiha clan, and Asuma applied to follow Shintaro as captain. It was said that he even had a fight with Hiruzen and insisted on staying in Shintaro's team. I wonder which is harder to deal with, Kirigakure ninjas or Kumogakure ninjas? Asuma sighed. Shintaro smiled at this and said, "The village of Kumogakure has strong military power, and the military power of Kirigakure village is also quite strong. But their strengths are different. The strength of Kumogakure village is based on military management and bold fighting style. Kirigakure village is also known as the Blood Mist village. Their strength is based on personal strength and brutal killing style. The Blood Mist village." Asuma seemed to have heard something. Shintaro said, "Yes, it's the Blood Mist where graduates fight each other. The ninjas trained with such a system might be weirdos." As he said that, he thought of a beautiful figure. Although Terumi didn't seem to show the cruelty of her killings, Shintaro felt that this woman was quite strange. When they first met, she fiercely teased him to start a conversation. Later, she kidnapped Kurenai but didn't hurt her and even kissed her for no reason. Shintaro touched his cheek and thought, "If we meet this time, I don't know what will happen. After all, I definitely won't let her kiss me again. No matter what it is, it can't be a match for Aniki," said Tetsuo with a flattering smile on his face, not missing the chance to flatter Shintaro. Shintaro had long been accustomed to this attitude, so he ignored it, and the 4 of them continued their patrol. It looks like something happened in the village ahead. He sharply noticed something unusual. After hearing this, Tetsuo immediately dropped the smile on his face, became serious, and took out a kunai. Asuma and Hamasu each took out their weapons and prepared to fight. The 4 of them quickly rushed to the village ahead. The place was already in ruins, with the tragically dead bodies of the villagers everywhere. The remaining villagers were so frightened when they saw Shintaro and the others dressed like ninjas that they thought they were the killers. Some villagers, overwhelmed by hatred, rushed towards the 4 with raised weapons, but were knocked unconscious by Hamasu. Asuma's lips trembled with anger. "Kirigakure, these beasts," Shintaro sighed and said, "It seems it happened before we were stationed. I only heard about Kirigakure's cruel methods before, but now I've seen it." Hamasu asked, "Why don't we build a defense on the coastline and protect the civilians behind us?" Shintaro said, "Set up a buffer zone to minimize bloodshed and avoid casualties. This is the strategy of the 3rd Hokage. Can civilians be exposed in the middle of the battlefield just to make a buffer zone?" Asuma said angrily. After all, no one knew that Kirigakure would have no restrictions and be punished for attacking civilians. Shintaro said calmly. A kind of dissatisfaction arose in the hearts of Asuma, Tetsuo, and Hamasu at the same time. Shintaro observed this from the side and thought to himself, "I don't need to say anything. The seed has been planted. Let's see how the seed will sprout in the future." 108. 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. During the month when Shintaro's team arrived at the garrison on the southeastern border, they successfully repelled numerous attacks from Kirigakure teams, annihilating the enemy every time. This record was the best along the entire defense line. Of course, Shintaro's presence made it impossible for any enemy to escape, but Asuma and the other 2 were not fools. They were the main force in facing the enemy. Shintaro was simply the last to deal with any enemies attempting to flee. He no longer needed to accumulate achievements and experience in battles of this level, so he naturally gave the 3 of them the opportunity. Such days lasted for 3 months. Kirigakure had conducted small-scale harassment, but had not been able to penetrate Konoha's strong defenses. Only a few civilians in the buffer zone suffered due to the war, and they all left their homes to avoid the conflict. The southern defense line was maintained by Minato, while the eastern defense line was entrusted to the Uchiha and Hyuga clans. Jiraiya was transferred by the third Hokage to the western defense line, where the war was most intense. After all, it seemed that the war with Kirigakure was just a minor skirmish. Sunagakure in the west launched a frenzied attack, and they had now reached Konoha. However, Kirigakure was on the move again. In a land of waves, Kirigakure forces had established their headquarters over the past few months and built a temporary port and camp. The land of waves did not dare to protest, and its citizens had little choice but to stay behind closed doors to avoid the war. A special transport ship sailed from the land of waves towards the fort built by Kirigakure on the coast of the land of fire. This ship was followed by more than a dozen quite large transport ships. Apart from the crew, there were only 7 people on the lead ship, all carrying their own uniquely shaped ninja swords. They sat or stood on the deck in pairs or groups of 3. Fuguki, please don't cut our pay for this operation, or Jinpachi and I will cut you into pieces. A skinny, masked man with long brown hair was chatting amiably with his companions. On the other side, a one-eyed man with bandages and a turban responded coldly, "Hi, you're right. Kushimaru, Jinpachi, I wouldn't dare cut the pay of the vicious duo." A man said with a smile. A few people watched indifferently. Biwa Juzo, Suikazan Fuguki, Kurirer Kushimaru, Akabino Jinin, Minashi Jinpachi, Ringo Aimuri, and Zuki Mangetsu. These were the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, famous in the ninja world. It was said in Kirigakure that there were 7 strange and powerful ninja swords passed down through generations, and the ninjas who held these 7 swords were collectively known as the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. The method of passing down the ninja swords was not simply a succession from master to disciple or father to son, but by defeating the original sword holder, one could be promoted to one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Judging by the power of the 7 individuals who could dominate as the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist in a cruel village like the Bloody Mist, they were incredibly strong. They were all elite ninjas of Kirigakure, and on average, they all had the strength of an elite jonin. Legend had it that 7 of them could conquer a small country overnight when united. The 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist specialized in carrying out difficult tasks for past Mizukages, and this time was no exception. Led by Suikazan Fuguki, the highest ranking among them, he led the 7 members and an elite force of 500 to attack the defense line of the Land of Fire and started killing, greatly damaging Konoha's morale. Fuguki carried a large sword with bandages wrapped around its blade on his back, called Samahata. Known as the Vicious Duo, Kurirer Kushimaru and Minashi Jinpachi carried a long sword named Shibuki and a needle named Nuabari. With green hair, thick eyebrows, sharp teeth, and a large mouth. He had 2 long swords with forked blades called Hiramakirii on his back. A man with a cap, a big nose, a thick beard, and sharp eyes stood next to him with 2 giant axeless axes connected by a rope and a sledgehammer as tall as half a person, Kabutawari. Juzo had short black hair, no eyebrows, sharp teeth, and a large cross-shaped scar on the right side of his face. His ears and neck were wrapped in bandages, and the lower part of his face was painted with red stripes. What he carried on his back was a broadsword with a slim handle and a wide blade, Kubikurabocho. The last one was Aimuri Ringo, wearing a blue ninja vest, a Kirigakure forehead protector around his neck, and his blue hair was so spiky it stood straight up. He carried twin swords, also wrapped, on his back, named Kiba. Jinin impatiently said, "How long will it take to arrive?" But no one paid attention to him, except for the close relationship between Kushimaru and Jinpachi. The relationships among the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist were very distant. After all, the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist was just a title, not an organization. Moreover, those who could become 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist were ruthless characters, so it was naturally impossible to talk easily, not to mention building good relationships. But they hoped not to be betrayed by their own teammates on the battlefield. After a long time, The tall Kushimura looked ahead and said, "We have arrived." However, no one responded. After that, everyone came ashore, and the person in charge was Ao, who was also the one responsible for the Kirigakure fort. "Everyone, I don't know what your plans are. I wonder if you can tell me so we can cooperate." Ao kept his posture low, although he was one of the best young jonin in the village. He had to be very humble in front of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, especially when they were all present. When the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist carry out their mission, they don't need to cooperate. Jinin said angrily, his words dominating and strong. After that, as the transport ships behind them gradually transported the troops ashore, the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist led the troops away. Inside the fort, one of Ao's subordinates asked, "Do we still need to send troops to support them?" Ao looked in the direction where the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist had gone and said with a shrewd look in his eyes, "We send troops, but not to support them, but to let them support us." The 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist and their elite troops moved quickly and swiftly past through the buffer zone, killing many Konoha ninjas patrolling along the way. But their presence was also revealed to Konoha. Act according to the original plan. Wait a moment. It is said that Uchiha Shintaro is very powerful. Let's leave one person to lead the large army. The original plan mentioned by Fuguki was for the 500 elite troops to draw the attention of the Konoha ninjas, and the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist would go deep behind enemy lines to carry out the plan. However, considering Shintaro's reputation on this battlefield, Fuguki decided to slightly alter his plan. "Let me do it." The speaker was Jizo. 109. The 6 ninja swordsmen of the mist sure. Fuguki did not refuse. In his view, it didn't matter who stayed behind. So, 6 of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist split off from the main force and took a detour into the interior of the Land of Fire. Juzo took out the thick, wide, and long kubikurabocho from his back and led his men to attack all the way. In the camp, Shintaro's team, who were resting, saw the flare signal on the front line. Enemy attack. The enemy's strength is significant. Shintaro stood up calmly. Fugaku also noticed this, walked out of the tent, and asked, "How many troops are nearby?" Uchiha Yashiro responded from the side. 100 men can be gathered within 5 minutes. It might take more time to gather the rest. Lead these 100 men to fight first, then go and gather the others. Fugaku commanded firmly. There was no other way. The 500 frontline troops directly under the jurisdiction of the Uchiha Clan on the Eastern Front were dispersed in a long and narrow area to build defenses. At the same time, let the garrison troops in the rear contract their defensive line and send reinforcements. Fugaku said, frowning. However, they'll create a gap in the rear garrison. Yashiro said cautiously. Fugaku replied, "We can't control that much now. Even if there is a gap, we can only lose at most a few ninjas, which won't affect the overall situation. The top priority is to confront the main enemy force in front of us." Shintaro shook his head and thought, if the real enemy elites are missed, it will still hinder the overall situation. However, he also knew that this was only a temporary measure. After all, the flare signal sent by the frontline scout ninjas was a red flare that would only appear when the main enemy force attacked. Shintaro looked at the 3 people around him and said, "After staying here for 3 months, we finally get to face the big one." Asuma flexed his muscles and said, "Yeah, I haven't done anything serious for a long time." Tetsuo and Hamasu also expressed their desire to fight. The front line quickly set off to fight. Everyone clashed with the incoming Kirigakure ninjas. Although the enemy's attack was fierce, the number did not seem as large as imagined. Juzo jumped down from the tree and slashed his sword directly at Shintaro's head. In close range, the silent killing technique from behind and the decapitation of the enemy's main target were Juzo's best skills. "Kid, you'll die sooner if you're too handsome. I recognized you at a glance, but don't blame me. My sword is very sharp and won't hurt you." Juzo thought he had succeeded, but something strange happened. The sword stopped in midair, no matter how hard he pressed. It was useless. Shintaro calmly turned around and asked, "Which one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist are you?" He was somewhat confident in the other party's strength. If he didn't have his 6 eyes now, he might not have detected the other party's silent attack. This was the silent killing technique of the Kirigakure village, and only elites like Juzo could master it perfectly. Juzo quickly retreated a few steps while lifting the Kubikurobocho and stared at Shintaro warily. The seven ninja, swordsmen of the mist, the wielder of Kubikurobocho, Biwa Juzo. Juzo's self-introduction was quite detailed, so Shintaro introduced himself. Konoha Jonin, Uchiha Shintaro. As they both introduced themselves martial artist style, Asuma rushed over with his chakra blades in hand. Asuma's fierce attack came towards him, and Juzo blocked it with his sword. He quickly found an opening and slashed at Asuma with his sword. Asuma quickly retracted his chakra blades and barely blocked the attack, but was still thrown back a certain distance. Juzo planned to capitalize on his victory to kill Asuma. At this moment, Tetsuo and Hamasu came from the side, Tetsuo using an earth flow wall to block Asuma. Hamasu spewed a large fireball, forcing Juzo to retreat. Shintaro looked at the three with relief. They had all made great progress and were able to jointly contend with one of the seven ninja swordsmen of the mist. However, Juzo did not intend to play around with these chunin for too long. He retreated a few meters, inserted the Kubikurobocho into the ground, formed seals with both hands, pointed to the sky with one hand, and placed the other on his chest. Kirigakure no Jutsu. Shintaro clearly saw the entire process of the Kirigakure no Jutsu with his 6 eyes. Juzo released a large amount of water attribute chakra, causing the water vapor in the surrounding air to rapidly condense into chakra mist. This was different from Terumi Mei's direct water mist spitting, but the effect was the same. Juzo then formed seals again, drew his sword, and used the silent killing technique again. During the use of the silent killing technique, his movements had to be slowed, which was a weakness of the silent killing technique. Seeing their vision blocked, Asuma, Tetsuo, and Hamasu immediately formed a successive formation, leaving their teammates behind them. Asuma wanted to use Wind Element, but he only used Gale Fist to disperse the thick fog, and the fog filled back up in an instant. At the same time, a figure approached Shintaro. Suiro no Jutsu. Juzo didn't know when he appeared behind Shintaro, releasing a large amount of water to form a water prison ball, and reached inside to control the water prison shape. Surrender, no matter how strong you are, soaked in my chakra-filled water. Before Juzo finished speaking, the water prison exploded. Shintaro's infinity isolated the water prison. At the same time, he used blue to tear the water prison apart and attack Juzo, who also turned into a puddle of water and dispersed. A physical clone with water attributes is somewhat interesting, but unfortunately far less sophisticated than a shadow clone. Shintaro evaluated the water clone while increasing the output of blue in his hand. Then he waved his hand, and blue rose into the sky, sucking up all the thick fog around him. No matter how much Juzo stopped and refilled, he couldn't keep up with such a strong suction. Juzo, who used the silent killing technique to approach the three, was directly exposed and could only retreat. Both sides completed their seals almost simultaneously. Suidun, Suirden no Jutsu. Katan, Rika no Jutsu. Katan, Geiki no Jutsu. 2 Juzo's water dragon bullet suppressed Asuma's strong fire technique and Tetsuo and Hamasa's fireballs, knocking all 3 of them back to the ground simultaneously. Just when Juzo was about to lift the Kubikurobocho and rush forward to kill Asuma and the others, Shintaro appeared in front of the 3 and pointed 2 fingers at Juzo. Juzo suddenly felt something bad and lifted the Kubikurobocho in front of him to block. Whoosh, a dark red light burst and hit the broad blade of the Kubikurobocho. The huge impact directly sent Juzo flying, knocking down several big trees and raising a cloud of dust. When the dust settled, they saw the Kubikurobocho in Juzo's hand was broken. Half of the broad blade pinned Juzo's whole body to the tree behind him, almost splitting him in half. Losing a lot of blood announced his death sentence. Juzo firmly bit his tongue and committed suicide to avoid being captured by Konoha. The 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist lost 1 member and became the 6 ninja swordsmen of the mist. The Kubikurobocho blade greedily absorbed its owner's blood, and a new blade began to grow at the break. Shintaro looked at Juzo's body and thought, 110. Only 5 left of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Something's wrong. Why is Biwa Juzo, one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, acting alone? Even if Biwa Juzo leads 500 elites, it's impossible for him to break through Konoha's defense lines. As long as the frontline troops are delayed a bit, Konoha's reinforcements will come from all directions and surround this Kirigakure force. Such abnormal behavior suggests that Kirigakure must be hiding something. Shintaro's mind raced with thoughts. He fought on the battlefield while approaching Fugaku, who was rushing forward. Fugaku activated his 3 Magatama Sharingan and killed everyone in the Kirigakure forces. He was nearly proficient in Fire Element, Jinjutsu, and Shuriken. Blue. Shintaro raised his hand to eliminate a dozen enemies around Fugaku, creating a safe environment. Then he approached him and said, "The 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist have been dealt with." This was the first time Fugaku had seen him use blue to fight enemies. He was stunned for a moment, then snapped back to reality and praised, as expected of Shintaro. But I think there's something suspicious about this. This force might have been sent by Kirigakure to divert our attention. Their real goal might be to create a gap in the rear defense line and exploit it. Shintaro concluded. Fugaku said firmly, "Go and check the rear. Leave the front lines to me." Shintaro nodded, then approached Asuma and the others and said, "I'll head to the rear to see if the defense line has been breached. Do you want to come with me or keep fighting here?" "With you," the 3 said in unison. "Okay, let's go." Shintaro led the 3 to move to the rear. They quickly arrived at the rear defense line. Due to temporary adjustments to shrink the defense line, a gap had formed in the middle. Shintaro scanned it with his 6 eyes and found several different tracks. The tracks moving left and right were left by mobilized Konoha ninjas, and the tracks moving forward were from those going to support, but there were only a few tracks leading to the rear of the Fire Country. Heading into the interior of the Fire Country, plus 6 more people, it seems to be the remaining 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Shintaro concluded. Asuma asked 6, "Can you handle it?" "I'll soon solve this small issue, but I can also leave you some practice," Shintaro said with a smile, as if the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist were like sheep waiting to be slaughtered before him. Heart of the Fire Country. A Chunin team was on patrol. Such patrol missions were unique to the war, between frontline missions and daily village missions. The client was the official Konoha village. "Oh, patrolling every day. How can I realize my dream of becoming a great ninja?" complained a young man in black clothes and black glasses. "Oh, it would be nice to live through the war." Another young man said casually. "Patrolling is meaningful, youngsters." A boy with a bowl haircut was patrolling seriously. These 3 were Guy's team. The boy in black clothes and black glasses was Ebisu. The boy with grass in his mouth was Shirenui Ginma. And the boy with a bowl haircut was naturally Guy. "Guy, don't be too enthusiastic. You should run away if you're really in danger. After all, we're only Chunin." Ginma warned. "Even though I'm just a genin, if I ever have to burn my youth, I won't hesitate." Guy replied. Ginma didn't know why, but he felt this answer was wrong. However, Guy knew in his heart that he had mastered the 8 gates Hashiman. Although he could now only open the 4th gate, he was confident that he could open the 8th gate. At that time, it would be the moment to burn his youth. But now, if he encountered an enemy he couldn't defeat, Guy would of course choose to run rather than make a pointless sacrifice. "Hey, there are 3 little guys ahead. Who's interested?" A joking voice was heard. The 3 were immediately frightened and their scalps tingled. When they had not noticed the enemy's presence at all, indicating that the enemy's strength was not on the same level as theirs. The speaker was Suikazan Fuguki. He looked at Team Guy and said, "If no one comes, give them to me and let Samahata have an appetizer. Fuguki, leave them to me and Jinpachi. I've never killed young Konoha ninjas like this. Let me have a try." Fuguki considered the strength of the 2 and said, "Okay, I'll leave it to you. Samahata doesn't care about such a small amount of chakra." Gunma immediately reacted. "They are the 7 ninja swordsmen of a mist. Run!" Before he could finish speaking, Genma grabbed Guy and Ebisu and ran back. Kushimaru followed unhurriedly, wiping his needle and mumbling to himself, "What kind of skewer should I make for you to look good?" Jinpachi sprayed foam to catch up with Kushimaru, turned around, and said, "You're so slow to think. Let me blow them up first." Jinpachi swung his sword down. Shibuki could channel countless explosive tags, and its lethality was very strong. By throwing Shibuki's explosion scroll around the enemy, it caused a large-scale explosion that could not be avoided. One side of the blade was an ordinary blade, and the other side was equipped with explosive tags. The explosive tags were stored inside the blade, usually used for slashing with the blade. The sword with explosive tags was used to attack, even if the enemy blocked the slash attack. The subsequent explosion would also cause great damage. Jinpachi swung Shibuki from a distance, clearly not paying attention to the three fleeing. The explosion in the air generated a violent air wave that overturned the three below. While rolling on the ground, Genma threw two kunai with explosive tags upwards. Although easily blocked by Kushimaru and Jinpachi, it also delayed their rise time. The three continued to flee, but the power gap was too great, and they were completely stopped in a few minutes. Jinpachi, "Don't make noise, we're still in the fire country," Kushimaru suggested. Okay. Jinpachi replied indifferently. Genma was holding a kunai and half-crouching on the ground with a tired expression on his face. Facing such enemies, even running for their lives was beyond their capability. "No, we're surrounded," Genma said seriously. "We can't escape like this," Guy muttered to himself while looking at the 6 people blocking the front. Ebisu said in panic, "How could? Are they the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist?" The 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist in front of them were either sitting or standing. Although they all looked careless, they exuded a terrifying pressure of strong, making the 3 Chunin gasp for breath. "What should we do? We can't defeat these people," Genma turned and said. At this moment, a green figure fell from the sky, finally caught up. "Dad!" The one who came was none other than Might Dewey. "Dad, you're a genin. Why are you here?" "Stop talking, you run. I'll buy time." Dewey had opened the 5th gate of Hashiman at this time. He arrived in time after noticing the enemy's situation, and sweat was already dripping from his face. "You want us to run away?" "Dad, the opponents are all jonin, and they are all 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. They are not enemies you can stop alone." Guy shouted anxiously, "I have the gate of death. But this is the rule I set for myself. Now is the time to burn youth." With tears in his eyes, Guy was pulled by Genma, and the 3 ran back again. "Don't ever think about escaping." Jinpachi raised Shibuki and rushed forward, not taking Dewey as a genin seriously at all. Dewey knew that his original strength was too weak, and even the 7 gates were not enough to face the 6 people in front of him. So he immediately chose to open the 8th gate of death. Gate of death open. The green aura around Dewey instantly turned red, which was the steam evaporating from his blood. Feigning. Jinpachi raised Shibuki and rushed forward. He was surprised by Dewey's sudden increase in momentum, but he quickly calmed down. Jinpachi jumped, the braid on his head fluttering in the wind. Shibuki. Straight punch. Jinpachi attacked with a punch, but Guy hit his chest first with a punch, so fast it blurred the whole chest instantly, and the explosive tags from Shibuki were thrown out before exploding. Jinpachi's body crashed into a huge rock in the distance and stopped. Then the explosive tags channeled by Shibuki's spray instantly exploded, blowing his body and the rock to pieces. Another one had been reduced from the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. 111. The ninja swordsmen are not popular. Jinpachi is dead? How could this be? Was he careless? Kushimaru couldn't believe that Jinpachi, known as the cruel duo alongside him, was killed by a mere genin. So you still have to be careful. Kirigakure no jutsu. Fuguki formed seals and released a thick mist across the sky. Do you want to hide your vision to kill? This is indeed Kirigakure style, but this trick won't work on me. Dewey raised his hand, and the strong aura around him rose, instantly dispelling the thick mist in the sky. What? He actually burst with chakra and dispelled the mist. Who is he? Ringo pulled out Kiba and couldn't help but take a few steps back. I am a genin of Konoha, an expert in catching cats, might Due. Due proudly mentioned his position, title, and name. Cat catcher. I don't care who you are, just die. CHT Nymph, Jigimo Nui. Nuabari is a very long and slender blade, like an enlarged sharp needle. Its hilt is tied with sharp steel wire. In a short time, when Kirigakure no Jutsu was in effect, Kushimaru had completed his setup. A dense network of steel wires suddenly appeared on the ground, shrinking rapidly and sharp enough to cut an enemy's ankles. He could see that Due was a taijutsu ninja, so he thought he could easily take him down as long as his legs were crippled. However, Due instantly jumped and leaped onto a nearby tree to avoid the blow. Akabino Jinin rushed forward with a blunt sword in his hand. With a giant axe in front and a war hammer behind, this combined attack was enough to smash most of the enemy's weapons and cut the enemy in half while still standing. Kushimaru threw his needle to attack Due. Use straight punch. Due turned to avoid Jinin's wild attack, then punched Jinin's head, forcibly blowing up Jinin's head. Due to the inertia, Jinin's body continued to attack downwards, cutting the branch Due stood on, and then the body fell to the ground. Due jumped down from the trunk, avoiding Nuabari in the air, and exploded with astonishing speed, rushing directly towards Kushimaru. Kushimaru barely reacted, only seeing a red light in front of his eyes, then feeling a wave of hot air, then losing consciousness. Youth kick. Due kicked Kushimaru far away, breaking more than a dozen large trees. Kushimaru's entire body went limp as he lost all his life. Don't fight him in close combat. Fuguki was so scared that he couldn't understand why this Konoha genin was so strong. Hozuki Mangetsu immediately formed hand seals. Suetun, Daibakufu no Jutsu. A large stream of water like a waterfall rushed towards Due, washing him away and slamming him into a tree. Raitun, Raryu no Tatsumaki. Ringo used Kiba to summon thunder, spinning it to create a dragon-shaped thunderbolt that struck Due. The combination of lightning and water flow was quite powerful. Due was hit, his eyes turning white, and the cracks like blood vessels on his body became more apparent as he howled in pain. It wasn't that the attacks of these two caused much damage to him in Hashima mode, but the body's own damage in Hashima mode was too great, causing Due to be struck by these two's attacks. Dewey's right hand and left leg now had broken bones, his body was covered with scars from the hard impact of chakra, and his time was running out. It seems my youth is about to end soon. After seeing this, Mangetsu thought his chance had come, so he took out Hiramakerii and rushed forward, injecting chakra into it. Hiramakerii actually increased in size, filled with blue chakra visible to the naked eye. The chakra formed a sharp blade and slashed down, unstoppable. Wait, Fuguki yelled, but it was too late. Youth, headbutt. Due jumped with one leg to deflect Hiramakerii, and Hiramakerii split the ground into a long, narrow, deep crack. Due approached Mangetsu and struck him with a headbutt, making Mangetsu's head twist. Of course, Due also felt the world spinning, but it was impossible for him to hand over his remaining hands and feet to the last two. When Fuguki saw this, he decisively fled. Although his body was fat, he was quite agile in escaping. Damn, I always use ninjutsu to still have a chance of winning, but I end up like this. A genin forced us to look like this. Is this the foundation of Konoha? Fuguki thought a lot as he ran for his life. Ringo, on the other hand, was much simpler. She only thought of the word escape in her mind now. It's over. If we get caught, I'll be the next to die. Dewey's recent record was too terrifying, killing 4 of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist in succession, all within seconds. This made Ringo so scared of Due that he ignored that Due was now exhausted. Due jumped on one leg, and his speed became slower and slower. He was gradually thrown off by Fuguki and Ringo. As the two were rejoicing, they suddenly found a figure blocking the road ahead of them. Get out of the way. Seeing the man in front of her not moving, Ringo took decisive action. Right on it. The tip of Kiba released a lightning ball to attack the person in front of her, but it seemed to have no effect. It's also an enemy. Quickly deal with him. Fuguki pulled out Samahata, rushed forward, and slashed with his sword, but strangely the blade stopped. Samahata, what are you doing? Samahata was different from other ninja swords. It was a living weapon with self-awareness. Its body was covered with spikes and could absorb the enemy's chakra to eat. So when Fuguki saw Samahata not hitting, he thought it was Samahata suddenly rebelling. Samahata, which hadn't eaten chakra and was inexplicably scolded, became angry, extending its spikes and stabbing Fuguki's hand, forcing him to let go. Fuguki retreated a few steps, extending his hand, and his long hair instantly hardened and fell out. Countless hair-like needles shot out, but strangely they all stopped in the air. Needless to say, the person in front of them was Shintaro. When Fuguki and Ringo saw this, they realized that they might not be the opponent of the other party, so they decided to flee. Then, both of them found that they could no longer run and were instead pulled toward Shintaro. Bam bam, 2 punches, chakra and cursed energy wrapped in Shintaro's fists were quite uncomfortable. Fuguki resolutely extended his long hair to protect himself. Ringo crossed her swords and summoned thunder to cover her body. However, Shintaro extended both hands simultaneously and aimed at both of them with 2 fingers. Curse technique reversal, Reg. The defenses they had painstakingly built shattered instantly, and they were thrown into the forest. The 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist were destroyed. 112. The Uchiha Clan is attacked. Shintaro had defeated 2 of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist when Asuma, Tetsuo, and Hamasu finally arrived. Is everything settled? Asked Asuma. 2 have been dealt with, the rest might be dead. Shintaro replied, watching Fugaku and Ringo flee in panic. He had already guessed the fate of the other 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Kirigakure underestimated Konoha. Even though Konoha now had more than a dozen and lacked troops, it did not lack top combat strength. Even in the seemingly empty Konoha village, there were 3 strong Kaga-level warriors, Hiruzen, Danzo, and Orochimaru. Although the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist were famous, they were just 7 elite jonin. Venturing deep into the land of fire with such arrogance was essentially a death sentence. Besides those 3 Kaga-level experts, Shintaro also thought that one person could force the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist into this state. Suddenly, he sensed an aura in the distance, his expression immediately changing, and he sprinted forward at an incredible speed. The other 3 looked bewildered and couldn't keep up with Shintaro's pace, so they had to lag far behind. Uncle Dewey, you... Shintaro reached Dewey. Shintaro. With a thud, Dewey collapsed to the ground. Shintaro flipped Dewey over and tried to use the reverse curse technique to heal him, but the positive energy from the reverse curse technique would automatically dissipate as soon as it left his body, making it impossible to treat Dewey at all. Dewey lay on his back on the ground, his clothes burned by smoldering blood, his skin charred and full of cracks, his entire body exhausted, and at the end of his life. Shintaro knew some medical ninjutsu, but they had no effect on injuries like this. He saw that this was the consequence of opening the gate of death. It's all my fault. If I could have come earlier, Shintaro said, guilt-ridden. Captain, take care of Guy. Dewey used his last bit of strength to leave his final words and then passed away. Shintaro hung his head in silence. Asuma, Tetsuo, and Hamasu arrived after a while. When they saw Dewey on the ground, they exclaimed, "Isn't this Guy's father? How did he..." Might Dewey managed to hold off the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist invasion and killed 4 of them at the cost of his life. Shintaro said, looking at Dewey's body. Asuma was shocked, unaware of Dewey's previous strength. He was not only surprised by Dewey's hidden strength, but also by his willingness to sacrifice his life. Asuma, take Dewey's body back to Konoha so that his deeds can be known to the public. Understood. Asuma nodded seriously and accepted Shintaro's instructions. Tetsuo, Hamasu, you are responsible for recovering the remains and weapons of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist and returning them to Konoha. Yes, Aniki. Tetsuo and Hamasu replied in unison. Shintaro then turned and rushed toward the frontline battlefield. There was no time to continue mourning Due, as the Konoha ninjas on the front line were still fighting. He rushed back to the battlefield, and the battle was nearly over. Initially, Kirigakure had the advantage, but with the Uchiha clan's tenacious resistance and Konoha's reinforcements constantly arriving, the situation began to turn, and the position had to be held. Maybe 500 Kirigakure elites ahead could be captured by Konoha in one move. And Shintaro's arrival once again added the heaviest weight to the balance of the war that had already tilted toward Konoha. Curse technique lapse, blue. Shintaro used his favorite crude method from his previous life, using blue to absorb himself to quickly approach the enemy, relying on infinity around him to attack opponents to death miserably. He rampaged on the battlefield, quickly helping Konoha clear the enemies. Shintaro, our position is really thanks to you. Fugaka stepped forward and praised. Did something happen behind? The 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist invaded. Shintaro replied. Fugaka was initially surprised, but seeing Shintaro's calm expression, he calmed down and said, "As expected of you, everything has been settled, right?" Shintaro said, "I dealt with 2, and the rest were handled by Might Due." Might Due. Fugaka didn't know much about Due, but he had heard of the Eternal Genin. He did not doubt Shintaro's words, so he understood that Due had been hiding his strength. I didn't expect. If not for the war, Due would have remained a genin in Konoha for the rest of his life and lived peacefully. Fugaka sighed emotionally. War indeed changed the fate of many people. Seeing all the enemies have been cleared, he immediately sent people to clean up the battlefield. The battle-loss ratio between Konoha and Kirigakure ninjas at this position was about 1 to 2. It was a victory for Konoha. At this moment, news came. Captain, the Hyuga clan's position was also attacked. Reportedly, many casualties. Initially, the Hyuga clan's position and the Uchiha clan's position were in conflict, but they were attacked simultaneously today. It was hard not to believe that this was a deliberate act by Kirigakure. Why are you only finding out now? Fugaku asked with a frown. Uchiha Yashiro bowed his head and replied, "The enemy killed several rescue teams they sent. Go and see." Fugaku certainly didn't care about the conflict between the Uchiha clan and the Hyuga clan right now. At least in front of Kirigakure, both were members of Konoha. Fugaku and Shintaro led a group of troops to the Hyuga clan station. There were ninjas killed in battle everywhere, some from Kirigakure and more from Konoha. The Uchiha clan's position could be said to be a great victory, whereas the Hyuga clan's position here could only be said to be a crushing defeat. Shintaro looked around with his 6 eyes and found as many as 400 corpses in the Konoha camp, while Kirigakure had only more than 100 corpses left. After observing the battlefield, the first thing Fugaku felt was anger because a large amount of Konoha's effective force had been lost on the battlefield. He quickly approached Hyuga Tokuyo, who was near.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.